All right, good evening and welcome to our October 5th Conroe ISD Board Workshop. Appreciate you all being here this evening. We'll start. I'm going to just make note that Mr. Moore is not here this evening. He is out with some work responsibilities tonight, but part of our purpose here tonight is to make sure that we have given you all enough training hours, and I will note that Mr. Moore is above and beyond his training hours with his work with TASB, so he'll meet that criteria, and we'll make sure that we share this information with him as well by the end of the night. We'll start tonight. Our first item on the agenda is public comment. Mrs. Godfrey, has anyone signed up?
They have not.
Okay. We'll move on to item 2, employee benefits and extended sick leave discussion. And before we start that item, let's, if we can, I know it's been a while since we've kind of had a workshop. Let's talk a little bit about our workshops and the structure that we've, I think, become accustomed to and comfortable with, of having the table with chairs here. And the point of this setup is to hopefully have it be more conducive for conversation. We want you all to feel comfortable to jump in at any moment, ask questions. All our presenters are prepared for that. You know, they know that at any moment, if you have a question, that we hope that you'll jump in and we can answer anything that you may have and go down that road. So we'll have plenty of back and forth, and our plan will be to wrap it up by 8 o'clock this evening, if possible. So that's the goal. All right. This first item, employee benefits and extended sick leave discussion. I'm sure that Mr. Rice will give us some history, but just to give you a little bit from my perspective, we want to make sure that we have a competitive package for employees. And part of that is the pay, and we talk about that every year, but there's also the benefit side, making sure that we bring solid programs and packages for health insurance and different, disability, all of those things. One of the things that we've had unique here is this extended sick leave, and Darren will explain it. It does take some explanation because it's somewhat complicated. This is, I believe, the third or fourth time that we as a school district have kind of explored this item as something that we felt we should bring to your attention and get your feedback on. We've just never gotten across the finish line to bring it here. The discussions have happened and then it just sort of has died out. This time we wanted to make sure we pushed it all the way through so that you could get a true sense of where we are and kind of what we think might be a good benefit for all employees and help us be more competitive as teachers are looking and trying to decide where they may go to work as they look at our benefits package, from salaries to days off and all the pieces that are a part of that. So we'll turn it over to Mr. Rice and Mrs. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Knoll. Good evening, President Huber, members of the board, and Dr. Knoll. Tonight, Ms. Green and I are here to discuss extended sick leave. The Employee Benefits Committee over the last several years has been admiring the problems and difficulties with our extended sick leave policy, and we feel now is a time to address these concerns, with the board. So what exactly is extended sick leave? Well, extended sick leave was adopted by the board back in 1990, and so I'm going to give you a little bit of a history of that, and it has really been fascinating. Ms. Gladys and I were talking today, retracing the origins of extended sick leave policy. Mrs. Gladys' staff was actually able to get with Harris County Department of Education, and they are the people who hold our records. And so they were able to go back decades, back to the 80s and 90s, to find out when was extended sick leave started. And we found that was back in the 1990s. And also back in 1990, we had a very generous leave policy. In addition to extended sick leave, we provided 2 local leave days, 5 local sick days, 5 local funeral days, and these funeral days could be extended with the approval of the principal. But the biggest item of all is that the extended sick leave benefit was paid at half pay, not half doc like it is today. And we do have a slide that Ms. Green is going to do her best to explain how half doc is calculated and paid, because it is very confusing, and we could spend probably a week on that one. So the best I can tell, piecing together that over the years, this benefit was determined to be very expensive. And so it has been whittled down to the product that we have today, which is extended sick leave with only 2 local days available to our employees. So what is extended sick leave? Once again, per board policy, DEC local, Extended sick leave is a paid benefit available to eligible employees after all vacation days, off-duty days, and available state and local personal days have been exhausted. A full-time employee who has worked in a full-time capacity for the district for the 12 consecutive months preceding the need for leave shall be granted in a school year a maximum of 30 workdays of extended sick leave to be used for the employee's personal illness or injury, including pregnancy-related illness or injury, for absences related to the illness, injury, or disability of a member of the employee's immediate family, for the birth or adoption of a child, and then eligibility for extended sick leave shall not affect the eligibility for leave under FMLA. And then extended sick leave now shall be taken at half doc pay. As Dr. Knoll spoke of earlier, we know that we are in a very competitive market to attract and retain the best employees. And one of the main factors that a potential employee will analyze when considering employment is benefits, including available leave. In addition to state discretionary days, we currently offer 2 local leave days compared to our peer districts that offer 5 to 7 local leave days, and they accumulate without limit. And we will see this comparison on a slide later in the presentation. Extended sick leave is utilized by only 4.4%, or an average of 350 employees a year, at an annual cost of about $750,000 a year.
That's right.
Local board policy DEC states, yes, sir.
Question.
On your, that second bullet,
Yes, sir.
it says, they accumulate without limit, so they're able to roll over.
If they do not
amount of
use them,
days, if they're here 10 years and they didn't use any days,
they
essentially
accumulate.
when they leave, we're paying them for 2 months.
Other districts are.
Yeah, we
Yes.
do
I
not
understand.
right now.
We do not.
We do not allow them to bank currently.
So that's how that works, okay?
Yes, sir.
Right.
And so they bank their days and they don't have to rely on the 30 days of half doc. that
And
we have.
if I could add just one other piece to the $750,000 in cost is the benefit cost, but the man-hour cost from payroll and HR to calculate this is not included in this
That is
cost,
correct.
right? So there's
That is
a
correct.
significant
When you
cost
say
there
to
as well.
calculate the accumulation of days, or?
The way this half doc works, Paula's
Or
going
the
to show you, but
half-doc
it's
thing.
it's all manually done. There's no automated system that can do this. So right now it's all touched.
And that 750 doesn't include the subs that come in to cover.
Correct.
Correct.
Just the amount that's paid out. Yes.
Mr. Rice, are you also saying then the accumulation from other districts, when they terminate their employment, are they paid for those days off?
We have a slide that'll show it. Some do, some don't.
Okay,
Some do, some don't. And
Okay.
we've got a slide that kind of breaks down what every other district that
All
we
right.
were able to get a response back from does. So once again, local board policy states extended sick leave shall be taken at half doc pay. And this is the important part. Please note, this does not mean half pay. This means half of an employee's doc rate. And this is very confusing to employees to understand the difference. And Ms. Green is going to explain half doc pay.
Here we go.
Okay, so just a reminder, as Mr. Rice mentioned, that the extended sick leave benefit kicks in after an employee has exhausted all their other leave days. So in this particular example, this is a teacher who has an annual salary of $61,450. Our employees get paid using what's called standardized pay, meaning that we take the annual rate, we divide it out by 24 paychecks, and that creates a standard. And that standard would apply to each one of those 24 paychecks. So in this case, the standard pay would be $2,560.42. Being a teacher, teachers work 187 days in their work schedule. And this is where we start determining what that doc rate is. So you would take that annual rate of $61,450 and divide it by the 187 days associated with the work schedule. And that's going to land you at a doc rate or a daily rate of $328.61.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
sounds pretty easy.
Okay, so if an employee has, with this extended sick leave pay, they would get half of that amount. So half of that amount is $164.31. Now, this particular employee also has deductions that are needing to be taken out, and they equal $458.61. Health insurance, life insurance, whatever it is that they've elected for themselves. And that amount would be subtracted per paycheck. Okay, so we've created a scenario for you here so that you would see what a normal paycheck looks like if we don't have this half dock occurring. So with this normal paycheck, I'm going to take you back to the standard, which is $2,560.42. That's what every paycheck is going to be. Yes, sir?
Yeah, we got it.
No, I'm running the math.
We got it.
We're good.
Oh, you good?
Yeah.
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
good.
I think he wants to be a teacher.
Okay.
10 days at the half dock rate.
Yeah.
So you got 10, you get docked, the deductions are irregardless. You're gonna take that regardless.
Okay.
90 days.
So you're right. So you see how it would look across the row if it were the normal paycheck? And then you can see what starts happening when an employee has exhausted all of their days and now we're using half dock. So this particular pay period has 10 days in it. Take you back to that half dock, take you back to the dock amount, which is the $328.61. So for 10 days, you would have a total of, it really would be $3,286.10, but half of it would be what you're looking at there, which is the $1,643.10.
Okay.
So you're going to subtract that out, which now this employee, instead of having 2560, now has 917.
Okay.
Then deductions have to come out, and that leaves the employee with this amount. And this is very confusing to our employees, especially when you get a combination of dock happening, or if they had some leave days before the dock occurred, how many days are in the leave period. It just gets complicated if you don't understand the rollout of this.
Do you give
And
them this?
I'm sorry.
Do you provide them this?
If they request it, we
Provide them this?
yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is a little time consuming, but yes.
And then,
This
and then,
example-
and then one of the first questions they have is, I thought you said it was half pay.
Yeah, that's the crux of this.
That's what we
Yes.
messing up.
But the second part of it is, it all depends. So even if we gave it to them when they applied for leave, if one thing changes, all of this changes. So you've created a record that really is not a record. So if I don't start leave when I originally thought I was going to start leave, that changes it. If I use too many more days of my personal leave before the leave started, but we calculated it one way, that all changes. So you have all these things that continually could make these numbers move.
Lots
But
of
yes, sir,
variables.
I understand what
And
you're
I think the explanation needs to be more so you can pay a day rate, right? Take your salary divided by 187, that's your day rate, right? You take your day rate, we're gonna dock you half of that day rate if you run out of vacation days or sick leave days. But what they're doing is saying, you're saying half pay, they're taking their pay and cutting it in half, which makes it a little less, right, for that period, if you took their gross pay and cut it in half, as opposed to how many days were in that period.
Yeah, and I think what typically happens for our employees, one, I would say, is they're not accountants. So like they're not they don't have the same advantage that you all have to be able to analyze the spreadsheet the same way.
Well, I think you just have an extra step here that's confusing, because really all you need to take is their salary divided by 187. You don't need to do that second step. So you just say like, what is your salary? And then it's 187 contract days divided by that, and you get straight to the 328 per day, and then half of that.
You just annualize, all you're doing is annualizing the
Yeah.
day for
And
them.
taking it to a day rate.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the
24.
understood. But what I'm saying is they're not accountants, and so and in the end, what the employees care about is the same thing that all of us care about in our personal
The end
life is
result.
Sure.
what's the bill paying money,
Yes.
right? That's the bottom line. And so one of the assumptions that gets out there that HR has to help clean up is the assumption becomes my check's going to be half of what it was.
Sure.
Because I hear I'm getting half docked, so I'm going to get half of the check I've always gotten.
Yeah.
Well, you can see here that that's so not true because of all the deductions, but that creates a lot of confusion because they think my bill paying money is going to be half of what it's always been. It's just not
Can we
that.
change it to quarter dock?
Yeah, well, yeah. Well,
I-
we have a solution here.
We have a
So,
solution, yeah.
Yeah,
Plus
we-
it's a
Here's the
manual
solution.
process, so it could be entirely reasonable that there was a mistake made, right? So I can see how that creates a,
Why is it a manual process?
it's just.
it is a manual process. Our system will not,
Too many
Yeah.
variables.
cannot
Can't
manage
digest
this.
Manual or?
Yes.
Manual.
So I have a question.
Taylor do this.
Yes, sir.
She said it does. That's probably
Is
what
it in our
is.
policy that it says in extended leave that you're paid at a half doc
Yes, sir.
pay rate?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell me the reasoning behind that?
No, sir.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
The only thing I can think of is as they were looking at the policy and they were looking at ways to rein in some of the cost of the policy, they changed it because when it was initially instituted, it was at half pay. And so they looked at ways to bring down the cost of that benefit and it changed to half doc, trying to rein in the cost.
Explain to me, Mr. Sanders, from your perspective, what is the difference in half pay and half doc? Because I see no difference.
Well, because it's
What-
because
who can
their,
explain it to me?
it's because their full one is divided by 24.
Versus 18.
And 24 times 7 is not 187 days. So they're using different dividers, right? So you
Denominators, yeah.
can't,
They're using, I'm sorry, what was the?
Different denominators.
yeah, so if you take 24 times 7, that's like 160.
Why are you doing that by 7?
But I'm just saying, that's why you can't just say, this is my standard weekly pay and cut it in half. Because one is dividing by the contract days of 187, and the other one is divided by
over the whole year,
24.
24
So
paychecks.
that's why they can't just take their, this is my weekly number and take it in half. Because you're breaking it down by a different
Understood.
denominator.
Well, instead of it saying half doc rate, could it say half daily rate, half doc of your daily rate?
So because if you take the daily rate, we're saying the same thing. If you take the daily rate and you cut it in half, it's the same thing. The issue becomes they only work 187 days,
That's my point.
right? As opposed to, if you're taking a typical
Yeah.
employee.
240 or
that's working-
something.
Yeah.
Because if you change the one calculation,
We may
you
be trying
really
to fix something that
I
they
know,
haven't
right?
Yeah, we have a solution. and
We
we're
handle
getting
this
there.
now. Like, we do this. We've been doing this for 30 years. So we
Yeah.
handle this.
Yeah.
This system, we handle. It's
Yeah.
complicated, but we do it. So
Yeah.
this one
Alright,
has been
sure.
handled. I think the next step is to see, is this the system we still want to live in? Or is there a better solution? So,
I have a question, though. I'm not interested in the math yet. I'm more interested in the philosophy behind the extended leave days. So we offered them 30 days at a certain rate. Again, what are we trying to accomplish here? Because I want to understand,
As we've kind of.
math is the math.
Yeah,
That's simple.
as we've analyzed this and trying to go back to 1990 when the program.
Right.
We always thought, why didn't they just do 15 days at full pay? Well, once again, I think it goes to cost, because they say, well, if we do 30 days at half doc,
It spreads it out over
it
time.
spreads it out, and potentially employees won't use all 30 days and won't access that money. That's just an assumption I have, but it's the only explanation that makes sense to me is why it would be
So,
like that.
so is the issue, though, that we're talking about more of a confusing with employees on whether they're getting half pay or half doc?
Yes, sir.
It doesn't have anything to do with the number of days?
It has,
Because
yes.
you mentioned there only 4.4% of the employee total are using this.
so the driver here is only 4.4% are accessing this benefit.
Right.
Yet it's costing the district an average of $750,000 a year.
Right.
But we're only touching 4.4% of employees.
Right.
When people are looking at us, Conroe ISD, to decide to come to work here, they see that we give 2 local days. Other districts give 5 or 7. So we are at a competitive disadvantage in the hiring process because other districts don't have this extended sick leave, but they give more local days and they allow the employees to bank them over time. So basically, the employee controls their own extended sick leave bank. And that's where we feel like, because this year you gave an additional 3 days to all employees of local leave.
Right.
And that's a driver of this conversation. That was a popular thing. People appreciated that. And so this looked like another opportunity for us to have this conversation, like, do we want to move forward in the future maybe without extended sick leave, but giving additional 3 days of local so that everybody gets 5 every year, and go to more of an opportunity to bank days, which right now our employees don't have that opportunity. Give them that opportunity to bank days so that in the end, 3 years from now, they could have banked 15 days at full pay, which would be the equivalent of this if they just banked their days. So that's really what it boils down to, because we hear that from folks that will, because when you're looking to be hired, you'll never know about extended sick leave. And many won't access it. Like, employees that have a lot of days built up, they'll never access this. So we could have veteran employees who have 70, 80 days built up. They would only get to extended sick leave if they use all of their own leave first and then got to this.
Right.
Or an employee that never saves their days and just burns up all their days all the time could access this annually. And so it's who are we giving benefit to? Is it to everyone to have access to a benefit, or are we only giving it to a small percentage, and maybe we're not rewarding the things that we would like to reward?
And Dr. Knoll, based on what you just said, I actually had an employee, as I was practicing my presentation to my employees, I actually had an employee say that she felt like she was suffering because she saved her days and didn't get to access this, where if somebody else
Right, it's like we're
didn't
rewarding
use
the
it.
wrong thing.
Exactly. So that's how she,
We're rewarding people not to come to work.
right.
Which is not what we're doing.
Ms. Green, I got one
Let's
question.
go
I'm gonna go back to the math and I'll leave it alone.
Okay?
Are the employees in general expecting to get half of the after deduction pay? Are they expecting, when you say half doc, are they expecting to get
Many of
about
them
$1,000?
Many of them believe that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, 'cause they're-
That's what they believe is going to
No,
happen.
no, it's the problem. It's fixed.
No, that's not the problem. The problem is they can't just, hold on, I had a question, or just maybe a comment. Like, I would say that this extended sick leave is also something pretty common in corporate America, termed as like short-term disability, and it is, considered a benefit, I think, to people looking for, places to work. So I would question maybe that it's not, it doesn't factor into people's decisions to work here.
I can just speak from my experience as
Yeah.
a principal for 8 years, and then I've probably hired 1,000 people in this school district,
Yeah.
and I don't think I would tell you that a single one of them even knew about extended sick leave.
And I think what it is it offers some protection, right? I mean, FMLA will protect your job, but there's no
Right.
pay with it.
Correct.
Offers some, protection that you are not, hopefully.
Yes.
That you are gonna be economically okay for the amount of time it takes you to recover.
Right.
Okay.
And would like to just add that, to my knowledge, we are the only district in the state that offers extended sick leave.
Okay,
Yeah, I think problem solved.
all right.
All right, so earlier, there was a question about what does this look like as far as local leave days with other school districts, and we pulled up our peer group, and you can see these districts that are included there. You can see the number of local days that each district gives, and whether or not that district allows those days to accumulate. And we don't. So with our 2 local days right now, at the end of the year, if an employee has not used them, we pay out at the sub-rate on the August 15th paycheck. And then you can also see, Mr. Rice referred to earlier, a couple of districts around us do have paid days for funeral leave, or when someone dies in the immediate family. We do not. We do allow an employee to be out for 5 days, but those are using your personal days or not getting paid. It's not a day on top of the days that our employees currently receive. So,
Wow.
And
Do we wanna get?
all employees receive 5 state days, so that's on top of this. So
Do we
like
wanna
our,
get into the funeral deal? I mean, I don't like that.
I wouldn't recommend it. I think Darren's gonna show you what our recommendation would be.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we're talking about ESL, extended sick leave, we just wanted to show some of the reasons that employees have a need and have accessed this particular leave. It may be for adoption, maternity. You can see the number of employees. This is our data from last school year, 2020, 2021. So you can see the number of employees that accessed the type of reason that they needed to use these days. And then for each category, the average number of days of that up to 30 that they could have used for that particular reason, that's the average number of days that was used. And then of those employees that did access it, at the end of the year, we lost some of those employees that tapped into this benefit.
So with that information, this is our recommendation for extended sick leave. And our recommendation is to discontinue extended sick leave effective the start of the 2023-2024 school year. And this timeline will allow employees time to plan for the benefit change, allow them to accumulate days and apply for disability insurance if desired, and this is recommended. And our Conroe ISD group disability policy does have a 1-year pre-existing condition clause within that policy. We would like to continue providing going forward the 3 additional local leave days the board approved for COVID-19 leave for a total of 5 local leave days per year. And this cost is estimated at $1 million per year and available to 100% of our employees. The $1 million is calculated based on if all teachers used all 3 of those days, and that would be the cost of the subs to take in the classrooms. However, it does not include any productivity we might lose from custodians being out or something like that. And then if we compare that to our current extended sick leave, that costs us $750,000 per year, and it's only utilized by 4.4% of our employees. And then starting with the 2021-2022 school year, we would like to allow employees to save or carry over unused local leave days or be paid for them at the end of the fiscal year at the current substitute rate. The default choice will be to carry over unused leave days if no choice is made by the employee. And then if an employee has unused local leave days when they separate employment from Conroe ISD, we would like for them to be paid for their accumulated local leave days up to $5,000.
And the driver there is, what you don't want is someone is preparing for separation, be it retirement or just moving to another district, to have 15 days that they feel like, if I don't burn them, then I get nothing for them. So then they leave, and we pay the sub $100 a day. We would rather pay that teacher that $100 a day and have them be in the classroom. So that's the point of that, paying that out.
I like that, but can you go back for me for a second?
Yes, sir.
It says the entity is gonna roll over at a substitute rate, right? So what does that quantify? How many days is that?
Well, what we're saying is that if there's any unused local leave days at the end of the year, an employee can choose to be paid at the end of that fiscal year, like we currently do on 8/15. They can be paid at the local sub rate. They can choose that, but or they can choose to have the days rolled over.
Yeah, I got it. So the days are gonna roll over, and it's gonna accumulate at the sub rate at a maximum of 5,000. Right? Because that's the max they're gonna get paid out.
Correct.
Right.
So
What's the current sub rate?
So what's the sub rate, so I can figure that
It's
out?
100.
It's, for certified teachers, it's $105, and for non-cert, it's $95.
So it's $105.
Right?
Yeah, so it'd be, so you're talking about someone have to be here for 10 years
Yeah.
and never take a day
Yeah.
to get to that 5,000 cap.
Understand.
So that's quite a time.
Yeah.
No, 10 years.
Yeah.
They can knock 10 years out.
Yeah, but to not take a day over 10 years.
Yeah, so how'd you come up with $5,000?
I have seen that is the limit other districts have on their, so,
So we gotta carry that on our books every year. You're gonna roll it
Yeah.
over each year. Right?
yes, sir.
Yeah, how will that carry? And you talked about,
Yeah.
how does that carry?
You know, currently, we have to carry on our books, our current state days, or we have employees that were hired prior to 1986 who had state days that they're allowed to be paid for those days up to 60 when they retire from the district. And we actually put that in our long-term debt account group.
Yeah.
And the only time it actually hits our books is when we actually cut a check to one of those employees. So we put it on in our general long-term debt group as an entry at the end of the year. And then that's just adjusted every year. But the only expense that hits the books is when we actually pay off one of those employees.
Does it, it's calculated based on the current subrate?
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Is it calculated based on the current subrate and then adjusted year over year?
Now, for the state days, it is at their current hourly rate, not the sub-rate.
This other one,
It's gonna be a-
That'll be at the sub-rate, at the current sub-rate.
at the current subrate and
Yes,
then
ma'am.
adjusted year over year?
Yes, ma'am.
And so you adjust, you take it to,
So-
take it to the P and L as they take it or as they pay it out, right?
Yeah, but I mean, if they're here 10 years, that's no longer 50 days probably. I would assume our subrate.
It would
go
probably
up.
come down.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
So.
Yeah, it would come,
They would have to keep, if they were trying to max it out, it would be
Less.
always going less, yeah.
yes, ma'am.
Days.
So I want to understand. Currently, right now, we have 2 days, and they're not a rollover. And only 4.4 of our employees are using this ESL. So the idea is to change that policy to add more local days and also allow them to accrue over time at a tune of $1 million versus $750. And the idea is, well, if we don't give them the accrual days, then they're gonna use them. I'm struggling with why I would want to do this as a district. Is
So-
that really a bargaining
So
tool
let's
when
just,
we
let's
hiring?
just look at our benefits, of what we think are our benefits to discontinuing extended sick leave.
Need to say that.
And one is the leave program will be more comparable to our peer districts in a competitive employment market. You know, when an employee looks, they can see that we compare on the leave banks. And there's less confusion for employees about the half-doc benefit and how it impacts pay. And then all employees, instead of just 4.4%, will benefit from the recommended change at a relatively low cost to the district. I know 250,000 is a lot, but it's relatively low when we look at, you know, a $600 million budget. And this change will actually encourage employees to accumulate days, thus actually lowering that $1 million annual cost because we won't have those subs coming in. So we think with being able to bank those days, that they will store those days up and we won't have to pay those subs for those days.
Why just 3 additional days? I think it was 5 to 7, right, the comparable?
3 additional days will give us 5 total.
It's
Why
5,
not
because we have 2.
And 7 would be at the board's discretion. We just,
I mean, part of that is that the challenge is, you know, we need our teachers to be at
Right.
work. Like, we do need them here.
course.
So that's the, you know, there is that balance of, you know, not giving so many that, those that do choose to use them all.
ju-
If you're sick is one thing, but just choosing to take them can create a.
just for
havoc.
clarity, districts that give 5 to 7, they give 5 days for 10-month employees, 6 days for 11-month
And I don't know
employees,
why we need to
and
add.
7 days for
Okay.
12-month
Ain't
employees.
nobody
What
used
about something like that?
4.4%?
Y'all
Yeah, we're doing away with it.
think that's too confusing?
And then
or-
I don't know why we need to.
It's just something we've never done.
It's just-
Not
We can entertain anything that,
No, no,
that
no.
you all would see fit.
Yeah.
We've just always
I
done
mean,
it.
if we're, if we're trying to, you know,
With my situation,
step up to, as a, you know,
don't usually pay
attractive
out PTO.
employer.
Part of that, I think, is, it would be how other districts define 12-month employees. So like, what I would tell you, like, for us, probably most of the people in this room are on a 226-day contract. All right, so we have built-in holidays, vacation days. Other districts may put their 12-month employees on a 245-day contract. And then they have to take,
231.
or whatever they may, so they have to take more. So I think even if we chose here to say 7 across the board, I still think that's comparable to other districts that are giving more for 12-month employees. And it's not 12-month employees where our struggle lies, it's 10-month employees. That's the teaching staff. And so at 5, I believe that's competitive. And you asked that question about, you know, the teachers look at ESL. I've never had a conversation with a teacher about ESL as they look to come work here. I've absolutely had conversations with potential teachers about the fact that we only give 2 local days compared to other districts that give more. Especially, you know, young teachers that are looking to start families, that are doing the math of calculating
Absolutely.
future potential maternity or paternity
But
leave.
we saw like one of the biggest uses of the ESL was for
Just saying.
maternity.
Right.
Adoption.
And
Correct.
then they quit.
Yes.
Some, not a whole.
Yeah, but that was the largest number.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
You think giving them more days is gonna keep them here?
no, but it's gonna cost us less for them. We'll pay them out and then they'll quit.
Oh,
What was the scenario? I didn't get what's the delay?
It's over.
Yeah.
okay. How much would one extra day cost?
Ma'am,
How much would one extra day cost?
Each day.
Half that?
about 300,000, 330?
Yeah, so the challenge on
3
the, like I
days
said, the
is
challenge on the extra days is not really a monetary loss. It's an
more-
instructional
You
loss.
saying going from 2 to 3, or are you saying going
Yeah.
from 2 to 1?
Yeah, so instead of matching everyone at 5, do 6. So,
Why do we want them off?
What do we?
Yeah, I guess my
And then how much does it
recommendation
cost us
there
at the school?
would be,
an additional day. And the chance.
if we
the
want to
public
give,
would have
if
been
we want to be more
anyway.
competitive in the market, I would say
If they gonna have a max.
it's a benefit to have teachers
Okay,
in the
let's-
classroom, so you don't want to overdo that. I would say if you want to compensate that, do it financially on the
Yes.
back end.
Absolutely.
So, like, take that amount of money and either build it into a raise, build it into a retention stipend, you know, in the spring, whatever that may be,
I get
and
it.
give it to them in straight cash that way, but it still inspires them to be in the classroom.
I get it. I think a lot of times we get kind of, myself, we get crossed over into corporate, where we want people to take the vacation, but we have redundancies. They're not manning the classroom.
Right.
But it's imperative, because they get off during all the holidays, and they're off during the summers and so forth. So when we have instructional days, we need the teachers there. I get it.
Absolutely,
I get it.
1,000%. There's no there are substitutes.
There's no substitute.
There is no substitute for,
We need the teacher.
for great teachers. You know, I can go in and teach an eighth grade science class, but I'm not gonna do it nearly as well as the eighth grade teacher would do it, so.
I understand.
So, you know, we just want to continue to get your feedback. You're welcome to call me in the coming weeks. Let's talk through this. This is something that we are looking at. It's gonna, we will take it to the Employee Benefits Committee. It has gone to that group before, but we will take it to them again for conversation to get their feedback on that. We'll be able to provide you with what their feedback was on this as well. We can also take it to the district level planning and decision-making committee just to share with them their thoughts, and we can give you all of that feedback. And then if this is something that we want to do moving forward, once again, our thought would be if we do this, we want to allow them to start banking days at the end of this year because you've given them 5, and so that will require policy change. And so if it's something that we are interested in, then Ms. Gladys would work through the policy change. We would go through that process of changing policy. But once again, we've had this internal conversation, just in my time in this building, it's been twice. And we just have never brought it to this point, but we felt like it needed to be here for you all to make the, you know, give us the feedback and eventually make the decision if you want to do something.
Well, there's only so many pennies in a dollar.
Yeah.
So however you want to cut it up is how you want to cut it up. But I'm willing to listen to this. I understand that. I'm seeing this differently as well, but, you know, whether you get a raise or you get sick days, as long as it's all within that same pennies in that same dollar, and we're not going over whatever the teachers are looking for. But
Right.
I'm not, we compare ourselves very, very well against our peers. We talk about how financially strong we are and how our education and all of that stuff. And I don't know how many of these other peer districts have job fairs where people are, you know, they're trying to get into the district. And I'm not in your shoes, so I don't know if how many teachers are coming saying, hey, the pay is not right here, or it's not competitive with other districts. So I lean on y'all's expertise to help me on that, but I would just tell you, I'm struggling with getting my arms around increasing pay in this way. And then I know in April or May, we're gonna be brought to us to have another pay raise, and this will be forgotten about, whatever we did here. So
Why you say increase pay?
every year, we give a
No,
pay
I'm
raise.
saying on this, why are you saying that's
Like
increasing?
an
You're going from 750 to a
Friends?
million.
It's not increasing the pay, though, that's increasing the benefit.
The
Ben-
total
It's the
compensation.
total cost.
Yeah, I think it's,
comp is
the key is we're spreading that benefit out
To everyone.
from, instead of 340 employees, it'll be spread out to 8,500. And I think that's the key here.
I'm not trying to be a fly in the ointment,
Yeah,
but what I'm
yeah.
hearing is only 4.4 are using it, and it doesn't make sense.
You just want all gone. Like,
I'm just struggling to say, well, why are we doing that, and why do we need to replace it with more?
You're adding
See, I would
$1
be on
million
the
in cost.
other side.
That's what I'm trying to get at. We're adding $1 million in cost
Right.
for a
The
benefit. that's
incremental cost is
750,
only
but
250.
$250,000.
The incremental cost is only 250,000.
I didn't hear that, what?
The incremental cost is only 250,000 because you will do away with the 750 for extended sick leave. So the incremental cost is only $250,000.
I understand.
Unless you're looking to get rid of the whole enchilada.
Yeah.
So I would be on the,
It's just,
Other
I'm just throwing
side?
it out there.
yeah. I would say, why not keep both? And, okay, hold on just a second. Let me
That's
explain
what
my.
this is for.
Let me
That's what this is
explain my
for.
thinking, right? The extended sick leave could not be used until the employee exhausts all of their banked leave. So you would not likely have a 750K cost there, right? It would most likely be
But if
much
extended
lower.
sick leave is still there is no incentive for them to bank their days.
Yeah, they won't bank
Right.
them.
So you would have the employees who bank their days and would never get to access extended sick leave if they were out, but then you'd have the employee who's burned every day they get every year, and the first thing they do is
honestly,
they
like-
get, and it happens.
It may happen, but I just think about the 4% of our employees that needed this, right? That needed this program to, to be able to continue like
Well, they
living
used
their
it.
lives
But
and
used it,
paying
yeah.
their
But one way to
bills.
think about that would be if that average time on here was 19 days, I saw, for like in maternity, 19 days. That's basically 10 days of full pay,
Can we go
right?
back to
That'd be 10 days of full pay. If you let them bank their days, in just 2 years, they could have those 10 days completely banked. Like you see maternity, so 20 days is average time on ESL, which means they received half doc of that time. So it's basically 10 days of full pay. So in 2 years, if you let them bank, they would have 10 days banked. So they would get the same benefit within 2 years. They would just be in control and own their own days versus,
You can't always schedule when you're sick or when you have a baby, like.
But that is also why we said,
There has to be a point where the employer and the employee share that cost. You have to share some of the costs you've been sick. We got a job, we got a corporation, a business, an education system to run. And the issue becomes a lot of folks take advantage of this, right? And so, yeah, they do, they do. A lot of people get sick every day, every year, and they continue to get sick, and not necessarily saying that some folks aren't legitimately sick, but some people take advantage of it.
and once again, I would say that for the masses, they would, do your proposal, it's very generous to employees, and I appreciate it greatly. I would say a majority of those employees would say they would want those extra days, which you were talking about, but then they'd say, take that 750,000 then and put it into the pot for a raise, or take that $750,000 and buy down our health insurance costs every year, so that everyone gets that benefit instead of only the few. And I know, Mr. Inman, I saw that you had maybe had your hand up a while ago. I wanted to give you, make sure you got a chance to speak.
I just wanted to make sure, when you touch with people's money, it's very funny.
Yes.
And maybe you said, I didn't hear, have teachers kind of looked at this and kind of give their feedback?
That's where it'll go to the Employee Benefits Committee and the district level. So
Yeah, I don't want to do
they're
something and then the
represented.
teachers say, what'd you.
Absolutely. And that, we need to get their feedback. And
Yeah,
so
that's my big thinking. What
But
are the teachers saying?
what we
I've been
didn't-
trying to scan faces
Yeah,
out there.
what we
trying to
didn't
read.
want to do was take this to a bunch of groups, again, because we've done this before, and then not bring it here, or take it to them and they feel one way about it, and then bring it to you, and we find out you feel a completely different
Sure.
way about it, and then we should have never proposed it to them, right? So we just,
secondly, in the benefit package, you have short-term disability, correct?
yes, sir, we have
They
the,
can purchase
So
that.
part of the problem, yeah, you do. I feel like the form.
It's short term.
It's not paid, they can.
we don't pay for it.
They can do it themselves. They may purchase it.
that is actually on one of our recommendation is for the employee to purchase disability insurance.
Oh, they purchase the benefit, they purchase it
Themselves.
short-term.
Yeah.
It's one of the voluntary benefits.
Okay.
It all says it.
Just putting it out there.
And we appreciate it.
about it.
Thank you. We appreciate your support.
one saluted it.
Absolutely.
Run it the
So
flag.
for my own edification,
Just
the
die.
summarized change in policy would really require three things. It would require us to eliminate the ESL it would require us to add 2 additional, the recommendation would be to add 2 additional personal days.
3.
3 additional.
Yeah.
3 additional personal.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I wrote that down right. I'm sorry, I just said it wrong. And then the third one would be to either have it roll or they could be paid at the end of the term.
Correct.
Yes, sir.
Create that
At
structure.
the substitute.
That is
Yes.
correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you. That's a wonderful summary. Appreciate that. Okay.
Just one comment, next month, or this meeting, you're gonna adopt DEC, which is the policy we're talking about, but it has nothing to do with this. This is those 2 leaves we talked about that were passed by the legislative session, so don't think we're
Oh, okay.
on a fast one.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll bring that policy again
Thank
back.
you for that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mrs. Green is going to go home and celebrate her young man's 18th birthday. So we're going to excuse her from this meeting.
What are you
Happy
doing
birthday.
here?
Whose birthday was it?
It's on 18.
Oh.
She's almost 18.
We're going to transition here to our next group of folks. One of the benefits of workshops is to allow you to meet the great people that you don't always get a chance to see, especially in this situation. We go to campuses and we see the great thing that the campus people do, but there's a lot of behind-the-scenes people here that are doing wonderful work, and you won't always get to see that. So that's the benefit tonight, to not only hear what they do, but get to meet these wonderful people and get to know them a little better and hear their heart. And what I would tell you about, this blanket statement is student support services. What I would say about these groups tonight is these are groups that are life changers and lifesavers. That's who they are. That's the work that they do. And it comes in a variety of ways that we'll see tonight, but that's really, if you had to just categorize them as to what they do, that's what they do. So we'll turn it over to Dr. Hines.
Are they gonna introduce themselves?
They will. Yeah, yes, absolutely.
know 'em, but-
Absolutely. Yes, there'll be full introductions, absolutely.
We'll do that.
'Cause we're going to be rotating
We will
who's here.
rotate, and I'll start off, Chris Hines, Deputy Superintendent. And good evening, President Hubert, members of the
Peter Hubert, nice
board, and Dr. Knoll. I want to thank you for letting us highlight student support services tonight. And really, this is a relatively new function within our organization. And I can't stress enough how thankful we are to you and for Dr. Knoll's leadership to allow us to kind of put this group together. It's been a long time making. I've been in the district office since 2003, so this is my 19th year, and we've been working. We started with very few functions, and we've added as we've grown. We've added as we've been able to find funding sources and those kinds of things. So we've grown throughout, and this represents really kind of the organization chart and who I work with. I get to work with many, many outstanding folks. And tonight, you're just going to meet a few of that one division that I work with, and we're going to talk about student support services, but also get to work with special education, the teaching and learning department, our school leadership, and we have just an outstanding team. And tonight, as Dr. Knoll said, you're going to get to meet, really we're going to talk about these areas of school improvement and leadership development, community outreach, dropout prevention, and then student support services. And they encompass many, many functions, and it's just something I'm really excited about. I mentioned we've kind of grown and changed over the years, and I'll go back in time, and since, in 2003, we were at 37,000, and this year we're at 67,000. So you can see we've grown 30,000 students. We're becoming more diverse. We're 9% African American, 4.9% Asian, 39.6% Hispanic, 3.8% two or more races. We didn't have that back in 2003 as a category. We were 43.1% white. We were 17% limited English proficient, with more than 80 languages spoken in homes. And I would guess that we're probably closer to between 25 and 30% of our families that don't speak English at home. We are 39.6% economically disadvantaged. And so you can see we've grown and we've become much more diverse over the last few years. Currently, we have 172 students in foster care. We have 332 students that are currently homeless, and that's a number that changes currently. We also work with many, many more students who live in our district or residing here temporarily that are homeless, who we support their services in terms of getting to their home district. There are 54 students that are members of migrant families. We have 381 students that are in military-connected families. We have 1,960 students that are recent immigrants to our country, and that's another number that's probably significantly underreported. 36.2% of our students are identified as at risk, and 9.3% of our students receive 504 services, and 9.3% of our students receive special education services. So, over time, we've changed. Student support services are those services that support students, they support teachers, they support schools, they support our district leadership. Everything's connected in our system, and this really has helped us to connect things. And if I had to reduce it to one line, I would say is every single student that comes to our district deserves our love and support, and that's what Student Support Services does. And we really try to focus on getting students to the end, getting them graduated, getting them to be as successful as possible. You'll hear later on tonight some references to college, career, and military readiness. Every year we give you a report on that. Mr. Colshin will do that coming up. And that's about preparing our students for post-high school experiences, right? Whether it's going to college and being successful, going into the workforce and being successful, going to the military and being successful, going on to become productive members of society, productive members of our community. And we do live in an outstanding community. There's many, many programs. You're going to get a quick overview of those services tonight. And, one thing I will tell you over time is we kind of work through this, go back in time, we didn't know what we didn't know, but we've seen changes to our laws. We've seen changes to our programs that have come about, as to respond to a growing number of youth suicides. There have been changes in laws. To incidents of school violence, there have been changes. The need of systems to support struggling learners. And we've seen that with the pandemic. Now more than ever, we have kids that are behind, and we're trying to support struggling learners. So there's been just lots of changes, and you'll see references peppered throughout this presentation. Just to remind you, all of this goes back and is anchored in state law, commissioner's rules, board policy. Right? We're not making any of this up. It's real stuff, and we've seen it over time. And I just think back over just the last few years. Whether it's students that have been families that were impacted. I remember when we had Katrina in New Orleans, we had almost 1,000 students come to our school district that had to be supported. And we're all running around trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to help our kids, help our families? We've been impacted by Rita, Ike. We had those Tax Day, Memorial Day floods in 2016. We've seen Harvey, we've seen Imelda, we've had a pandemic. During 2008 through about 10 or 11, we had some significant economic challenges in our community. And so, life happens, and part of supporting kids and helping them be successful is recognizing the whole child. And you see just our basic model of our multi-tiered systems of support. It's loosely based on the state model, but we've kind of Conroeized it and made it our own. But you can see it embraces and it shows how everything's connected. And we work with all departments. We work with teaching and learning. We work with our school leadership, our campus leaders, our district leaders. But it's about strong school leadership, and you're going to hear about that group. We're going to talk about safe and collaborative cultures at our school. We're going to talk about high quality instruction, how we support that, professional teaching and learning, and then the strategic use of data so we can make decisions and be informed. And we support all of that, and there are different functions in all those different departments. In teaching and learning, we do staff development and curriculum writing, and they handle a lot of assessment data. And we have school leadership, and again, but tonight we're going to focus on some of those departments and areas that fall under MTSS. And truly, I am blessed to work with an outstanding team. You're going to meet some great people tonight. I can't tell you how fortunate I am and how fortunate we are as a district to have such outstanding people. So I'm going to turn it over first and foremost, our leader in this area, and that is Dr. Tamika Taylor, who is our Assistant Superintendent for Student Support Services.
Thank you, Dr. Hines. Good evening again. And I'll be a little redundant in my message because it's so important to introduce such an amazing team. As Dr. Hines said, these departments help students as they matriculate through Conroe ISD from the time they enter school until the time they graduate. And what we do with these departments, we look at processes to support students as they acquire social, emotional, cognitive, and academic development. We look at dropout prevention, leadership development. We use the Texas Comprehensive Guidance Plan, just to name a few. And as Dr. Hines said, tonight you will get to hear some details from the directors who lead these departments. Feel free to stop at any time to ask any questions you may have for our presentation tonight. The 4 departments also lead several staff members throughout our district, such as social workers, behavior staff, district leaders, counselors. We have coordinators and specialists, and we actually have a coordinator and a specialist with us tonight who decided to join us tonight. We have Denise Griffin, the coordinator of student support services, and we have Lindsay Taylor, who is our mental health specialist. So we just have a group of amazing people who work really hard. And then our directors tonight are very skilled in their craft, as you will hear from them. We have our school improvement and transformational leadership, 2 of the most decorated administrators I've ever met, Mr. Fuller and Mr. Brown. You will hear from them. Dropout prevention and recovery, Mr. Chavez. Student support services led by Kim Earthman, and under that umbrella is guidance and counseling. So we work collaboratively with schools and district leaders to provide support, to deliver services for the learning experiences for our students, and it is an honor to be able to serve all of our students in these various capacities. So we'll go ahead and start with school improvement and transformational leadership.
Good evening, I'm Jeff Fuller. I'm one of the directors of School Improvement and Transformational Leadership, and I have my partner here. Hartwell Brown. This is Hartwell Brown. Sorry. So what do? Coaching's what we do. That's our business. You know, our mission is to develop and promote exceptional leaders for student achievement. It's kind of a multi-pronged department. We work with schools that are working for needing improvement, and on the development side where we're building capacity for future leaders. And so that we have a pipeline for that. You know, we haven't had that before. So as we develop and grow in our own department, it's something that we're building upon. So kind of in a nutshell, what does that look like? You know, it kind of depends on the schools that we're working with, what they may need as we go through it, but we kind of find some patterns with what we do. Part of that, I think, is we help develop processes and protocols and systems to put in place. We work with the school leaders on that when we come into the buildings and we sit down and we look at what's going on, you know, from anything from, say, how do they enter the cafeteria? And these seem rather simplistic, but they're really multifaceted decisions that are made a lot of times. And so it's what does it look like in the classroom? You know, what are your lesson plans? How are you budgeting? Those type of things that we're looking at, that we're trying to establish that may not necessarily be there. You know, we also meet with our teaching and learning department, kind of in conjunction with them when we see something, when we're out on campuses and talking to them, or it might be student support services if we see something behaviorally that's going on, or with foundations that's going on that you'll hear a little bit about. So we try to instill some structures and systems. And that kind of moves into the second piece of what we do or may do, depending on the campuses, and that's building that positive culture and climate. You know, I think there might be a misconception of what culture is and what it should be, and culture really is that piece that what you see is happening, what you're actually doing. And so when you develop these systems and protocols that you put in place, that really helps out expectations of what's going on. It creates a better environment. I think you all have probably walked into the buildings where you can tell where there's something's really going on good and some that needs a little help. You can feel it, and that's that climate piece that it goes kind of hand in hand. So those are two of the areas that we work on. There's also a piece that we may work on in where we help with planning and data-driven instruction. And this is a really big piece that we're looking at, because we're trying to move that, especially in meetings and data meetings where we've been historically really good. We're a district that's big on data rich, and we've been in meetings over the years, hundreds of data meetings where we talk a lot about data, and that's good, but it's always been what's next. And so what we do a lot now is coaching the teams, coaching our principals and assistant principals and leaders on how to transition that meeting. It's a kind of a paradigm shift of what we were doing to what it should look like. So we work with teams moving that way from just talking about the data to an actionable piece of now let's look and see what it looks like and how it's taught. And that may seem like, well, that's the way it should be, but that's the way it should be, but not necessarily has happened that way. We also may help with creating observation and feedback cycles, and that trying to get principals that may not think systemically or systematically on calendaring their observations. And again, that may seem simple, but some people just don't think that way. And so you're trying to get them to think in a manner of putting their observations on a calendar. And for those of us that have been in that position of observing, you'll know that it could get overtaken at any moment in time by the DIAG secretary. If you don't have it calendared out, somebody else is going to put you in that slot. So we look at it that way, but we also are trying to give a sense of whenever you're doing these observations. Historically, it's been one where we look at observations and it's one big picture. It's kind of a summative, it's kind of taking your car to the repair shop after it's all messed up instead of diagnosing it along the way. So we're trying to get our principals and our leaders to think in a different manner of breaking down into small chunks, actionable items that you can use along the way instead of waiting to do one or two big observations and then saying, here's what you need to work on and throwing out a big plethora of ideas. We're trying to break that system down, which is a different way of thinking as well. And looking at research and some of the things that you see, it talks about breaking it down, seeing more, but breaking down into very small chunks, whether it's maybe conferring or we're going to work on a small group or just very small items that can be done within weeks. So those are things we do. Yes, sir. Go ahead. Mitch.
Are you getting to the transformational leadership piece?
I am.
Okay.
I
didn't know if you covered it or not, but okay.
Okay, my question was going to be, and if I'm jumping ahead, then you can tell me to wait, but I'd love to hear an example of something that you transformed, and Mr. Hartwell, same with you at some point when you get up, but I hear what you're saying. I'd love to hear an example of what you saw, how you changed it, what the outcome was, and how it improved.
Okay.
Well, I'd like to jump in at this point. Again, good evening. I'm Hartwell Brown, Director of School Improvement. And one thing that I've done going into school is that, I'm here to coach you, so, I want to work with you and try to help your school to succeed. So one thing this year is that going into the campuses, I've noticed that we weren't writing good content objectives and language objectives. So I got with the T&L department, those content coordinators, and we're developing a process right now how to write a good content objectives. What is the student trying to learn, or what should the student learn by the end of the lesson? And also develop good language objectives. What should that skill be learned by the end of the lesson for those kids that we consider as LEPs? So working with the content coordinators and developing specific ways to write content and language objectives, we're going to transfer the junior high world, and we're going to see all those campuses hopefully getting stars as Washington did when I was the principal.
There are not enough stars to go around, Hartwell. They all get them.
I was wondering how long it would take for you.
That's right. So,
What's the acronym? Did you consider, what was that?
T&L.
Limited English proficient students, that's the language objective. If you have any of those skills, you should have a language objective for those students so we can address their learning, listening, or speaking skills.
Okay.
So Jeff, can you give an example without naming a principal or a campus necessarily, but it's an example of a coaching opportunity you had with the principal that specifically you were able to share an idea either that you had or you saw somewhere else and how it made a difference?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked because I like to share this piece. We're actually working on it today. So there's what's called data-driven instruction. It's a huge component. It's as far as student achievement goes, it's one thing that you can do. It's the highest leverage that you can do to increase student achievement, and so I'll get into that. Historically, what we've done with the data is we'll sit around the table as a principal, and we'll break down the data from the lowest TEKS, the highest TEKS, who did what, how it was taught, but you never really got to see it. So would sit in those meetings at the end of it, after 50 minutes, would say, great, you know, I'm glad you got to share that. And as a principal, I might be able to link that to an observation and feedback later on if I'm able to get to it. However, what we're moving to, and there's a couple of campuses that I'm working with that are transitioning to, so you, instead of 50 minutes of talking about data, all of your data is done beforehand. So teachers have, whenever they give an assessment, whether it's an interim assessment or a common formative assessment, whatever it may be, they break down the data by demographics, how well students achieved, how well they did not achieve. And so when they come to the meeting, now we're talking about, let's take your lowest standard, whatever the lowest objective item was on that test. And we're going to break that item down, and we're going to start having a discussion, which I've always said as a principal, one thing that increases the capacity of everyone around that table is the conversation and the power of conversation. And so what happens now is everybody around the table is talking about, they have an exemplar of what a response should look like. And then we have an example of what was a poor example. And so what the teachers do, they talk about the exemplar and what the student missed, and they talk about the gaps or the misconceptions of what happened on that item. And so now what they're doing, everybody around the table has an idea of what is really happened with that. So now how do we reteach this? And so it's called sparring. And so each teacher takes a piece, and they write down how they would script it, and then they pass it to the right, and people get to add around the table of how you would reteach this. And so that kind of pushes that conversation of this is how it's taught. So everybody, even if you're a teacher that is really not wanting to get up and talk about it, it's still in their head, this is how it's being taught. So after that's done, then the real fun comes in. The newbie in the group gets to stand up and do the reteach and model it. So you're actually seeing that within the whole, that data meeting. And so instead of talking about data, we're now talking about misconceptions and how to teach it. And it's in one of the books where Get Better Faster, where you're increasing the capacity of a new teacher exponentially by having this process. And so everybody around can give feedback to that. So everybody's learning. So that's one way. And so this is rather new. It's not happening throughout the district, but it's in small pieces. So, and it's really almost, I'd say, a year-long process. But those that are on it, they love it. They don't like talking about the data so much as now what do we do? And so that's kind of where we are with this process. And they love it. And we're actually, in our transformational leadership strands that, if you want me to go ahead and talk about that? So we have 3 strands that we work on. Aspire to Lead, which are our teacher leaders. They may be department chairs. They may be team leaders, everything that, besides those that don't want to be an administrator. So what we do, we work within a framework of what's called the Effective Schools Framework. It's a framework that Texas has put out that you follow these guidelines and TEKS or essential standards, and this is what is you're guaranteed. I say guaranteed. You follow this, and this is what every school should look like and what you're doing. So we kind of work within that framework, the MTSS model that Dr. Hines had mentioned, and you'll hear later on. That's one strand. And so they have 5 trainings throughout the year. We have 108 that are in that program, and these are just teacher leaders on campus. And we also have the Aspire to Lead, and for assistant principals in that strand, there's 103. So, and once they move, they don't have to move from one strand to another, but when they can move into a higher level, and they are exposed to more elements or TEKS, so to speak, kind of like what students are exposed to. Mm-hmm. And so that is 9 sessions, and we cover a lot of what I've talked about in here, you know, how to reteach, how to do observation and feedback, how to do processes from your cafeteria to what it looks like in a classroom. And we have different departments that help us present this, professionals, Dr. Edith Upshaw or Ms. Earthman that come in, and we have guest speakers that come in. Some of our practicing principals and assistant principals come in. And then we have an aspiring to lead principal, aspiring to be a principal. And so there's 8 sessions of that. And it's a application process. And so there's 23 within that group. And they're exposed to another set of TEKS or standards. And so the idea is by the time they get through in this pipeline, when they start at one area and move through from a teacher leader to an assistant principal to principal, they've had this exposure to all of these experiences and job embedded activities that help develop them along the way. And so it's a long process. It could be years, but that's where we are on the transformational leadership side of our program.
And then we have a couple of outside partnerships. Dr. Taylor, you want to talk about a couple of those outside partnerships that we?
Yes, we have some outside partnerships with Into Learning that provide leadership training and coaching for our assistant superintendents and some of us. And we have an executive leadership institute that we attend. We also have the program that we're working on to develop a pipeline of leaders with the Holsworth program. So we incorporate everything we do with our leadership pieces into our staff members. But to the short version of these two gentlemen, and when they talk about transformation leadership and working with campuses, would equate to, in the corporate world, they take processes and systems and they make them better. And so that's the short of what they've done. And we continue to refine our systems every year to have better programs for our future leaders.
And I would add that everybody works as a team. So really, we're all about school improvement. And these two gentlemen work very closely with our 3 assistant superintendents over the schools. And so it becomes another resource and another way that we can mobilize when we say, okay, I want to work with this campus, and you take this one, and we kind of spread it out. So it's a team effort, but we're very fortunate to have outstanding leaders in this area.
Any questions for them before we transition to the next one? We're going to try to keep moving. I know we have so much great information, but we want to honor your time here as well. So go ahead.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Peter, do you have a question?
Appreciate
Go ahead.
it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's directed towards the two of you or not, but the question I have is, the idea is to get all the teachers to go through this leadership at some point. I know you said it's kind of limited right now, but my question is, today's classrooms are completely different, and there's lots of challenges with, I would say at the high school level, differing opinions on just what's going on in the world. Are you having teachers and principals coming to you guys to say, teach us how to handle the classroom better, to control the content that's coming in the classrooms that stays in the TEKS training, but allows a student to express themselves without being having to force their own opinions? I'm not sure if I'm answering.
I think that will be covered when Ms. Earthman
You're gonna get
comes
to
up.
that?
Yeah, that's a key component to what she's going to cover.
Okay, thank you.
So up next, we have Mr. Chavez.
Thank you.
Guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Mr. Chavez?
To see all of you. Well, my job in a nutshell is to make sure that those kids that have difficulty graduating graduate on time. On time meaning in 4 years. So you're going to be looking at some numbers which you have in front of you, which attest to the fact that we are going in the right direction when it comes down to attendance. That's one of the things we do. We try to assist assistant principals, make sure that kids are coming to school regularly. Then graduation rate and dropout rates, of course, we all know what they mean.
And the picture right here is that most kids in our school district will graduate without ever meeting me or anybody in my group. But the ones that meet our folks, our team, they need a lot of help. So after this, we're going to be looking at the staff, the people in our team. But I want to point out, look at the first. Look how we are on the right track regarding attendance. In 2006, 2007, we were 95.4%. Now we are at 96.3. We're looking at 2018-19. These reports, as you know by now, they're a few years back.
Yeah, pre-pandemic.
Pre-pandemic. But look at the state attendance average. Okay, so we are ahead of the state attendance. Let's look at the next, right here, graduation and dropout rates, which we're very proud of. And cohort, what it means is in 4 years, how many folks are graduating. And we have 95.3, where the state is at 90%. And the dropout rate, we are at 0.9 when the state is at 5.7. That is a significant
Difference.
we beat them pretty good at that one. And then what you're looking at the very next line, it is that year, well, you're looking at the 2018-19, the cohort graduation rate, and it's still looking good, 96.4 versus 90% of the state, and the dropout rate still at 0.9, and the state is at 5.9. And the last one is the annual rate is for that particular year, 2018-19. Look at our dropout rate, 0.2. To the state, 1.9.
Question.
Is Mr. Chavez, so the difference, 95.3, the difference in the dropout rate and the graduation rate is just folks we can't track, and we couldn't track, correct?
What was that again?
No, there's two other areas. So there's leavers there's continuers, and there's those that get GED. So there's two other groups that make up that total of 100%. But we didn't put all the data up there. You'll get that in a later report.
Like they gave us actually 6 years for a kid to graduate.
Mm-hmm.
We expect them to graduate in 4, but they can graduate in 5 and still be part of the statistics. They can graduate in 6 and still be part of the statistics. We know that if they don't graduate in 4, the odds of 5 or 6 are less and less. But that is one of the things that our department does, is to increase those odds.
For those that didn't make it and ended up dropping out in our district, do you see do you see a theme, like the same reason? Is there a particular?
Yeah, have to go to work. They become the game, they have to support the families. Economics.
I mean, that's at the end of the day.
Has been a big one, especially now with the pandemic.
Right.
A lot of parents were losing their jobs, and the kids had to be out there doing whatever they could to bring some. So we found a lot of them. They dropped out because of work, and what we try to do is work with them. Mr. Hubert, we try to work with them. What can we do? What about GED? What about night school? What about putting you in some courses now and then bring you back later? So what we do is we keep those kids we monitor those kids. I will say that is primarily what we do is we give them a lot of love, like Dr. Hines said. We let them know that they're loved, and we keep calling them, and we keep asking them. And one of the advantages is once you are a dropout, you cannot be a dropout twice. So it is an incentive for us to continue to go get them and not view it as a punitive act by the district where this kid who's been a dropout now is going to be a dropout twice. No. Once a dropout, you cannot be a dropout twice. On the contrary, that child can be a completer because he's still got 5 or 6 years to finish. And that's what we try to do in our department.
How big is your department?
And there it is. Very good, very good. I remember I asked you to ask me that question, Mr. Williams.
There you go.
So there it is. We have 67,000 students, but like I said, small
Almost
percentage
68.
of those 67 will need our services.
Mr. Chavez, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Of your team here, how many are grant funded?
So that's a great question, and I'm gonna jump in a little bit. We put in parentheses, Mr. Chavez, we put in parentheses how they're funded, so you can kind of see, and that's something that, you know, and I know Pam Zoda's not here, our Director of Federal Programs, but she's been a great help in this, but over the years, you can see that we fund, there's some that are funded locally, and certainly the top three are, but then you start getting into that, we use state compensatory funds, we use special education funds, we used ESSER money for some positions, we used our homeless grant, we fund some social services liaisons locally, we use Title III immigrant money, Title I migrant money, homeless grants, and we even use, in other areas, we use Medicaid funds. So this is a department that's, for the most part, pieced together with funds from all over the place, if that makes sense.
It makes great sense, Dr. Hines, and that's my concern at one level. As we saw earlier, the slide shows that our economically disadvantaged students continues to rise in Montgomery County, or at least in Conroe ISD. And we were at 27, 2003 or whatever it is, now we're at almost 40%. So when I look at that, I know that 2 out of the 5 students that we see are economically disadvantaged, and we're having to piecemeal support services with grant. I'm glad we're doing it. Please don't get me wrong. I'm glad we're doing it. I just feel like that's one area of our budget that we ought to really take a hard look at. And I know some people may disagree with me, but in my opinion, I believe helping get those students across the line of having a proper education will help them be successful in the world. And I'd much rather, you know, have them bagging my groceries than robbing my home. And so to be able to survive. And so I would rather find ways that we can help support these students that need these added services with other budgeted funds rather than simply grant. I know we can keep reapplying, but, you know, ESSER's going away. We know some of these funds they're gonna go away over
Some of these
time.
end
And it concerns me that we may have 2 social workers that are being paid by ESSER funds, that when the ESSER funds run out, what are we gonna do? And so as a board member, I'm concerned about those students and those people that are helping those students a lot.
And so part of our plan with these ESSER-funded positions is that transition plan off of that, so that we don't come to you in 2 years and say they're all gone. It's how do we then work them into our budget? That's part of that challenge for Dr. Hines and Mr. Rice and myself as we move forward in the budget, is to begin to prepare for that kind of ramp down off of ESSER so that we don't see a loss of services when we get to that point. And, you know, we are fortunate to have continued enrollment. Growth helps us with that because, you know, we will have more funding that allows us to make that switch, so.
We have 33 homeless seniors in the district. And to give you a story, last year, we had 22 seniors at 22 seniors in one campus. So this year we have 33 district-wide. Last year in one campus, we had 22 seniors. But let me tell you, 21 of those 22 graduated and are in college. And very proud of that.
Yeah.
And so we're making an effort this year to look at those 33 seniors and making sure that they get to college. So we have some programs in the school district that are fabulous, and I would like to mention one of them right now, the Project Mentor. The Project Mentor, we have 200 mentors to 200 mentees. And it makes a difference on that child to have a responsible adult with them. And many of them take them from elementary school all the way to high school. I know Mr. Michael Knoll has been a mentor for many years. And that's a man that takes his business of mentoring seriously, very seriously. And it is people like Mr. Knoll that have seen those kids go to college. Not all stories are positive and wonderful. But I tell you what, it is because of that man or that woman that those kids are going to be better. I guarantee you, the mentor program is a fantastic program. Another thing that I would like.
If I can jump in, like, that's an opportunity. We hear from people that say, you know, I want to change the lives of children. What can I do? I want to be involved in the school district to make sure children are taken care of. And that's the way. That's a way,
Yeah.
right? People truly want to engage and make a difference in the life of a child. That's a way, and we have this opportunity, and there's room for expansion. That's the good news, right? Is that is an area that we could get bigger. If we have a lot of people show up and say that's what they want to make a difference, that's a way to make a real difference. And
Well, if you look at your chart, the ones you still up there, you got 1.6 people handling those 200 mentors.
So, Mr. Chavez, do we offer that at the beginning of the school year? Do we do some sort of orientation?
Yes.
Request from
Absolutely.
different civic and community clubs, or?
Yeah, Angela Matthews, she goes around, goes to churches, goes to places,
Okay.
letting people know, come on down, I will train you, I'll let you know. All it takes is one day a week. And you bring lunch for that kid, and you're not required to speak to that kid about anything. You can just go there, sit there, and wait for the kid to open up after he eats his burger or taco or whatever you bring him. But it is a great way to develop a relationship with a child and a lot of the mentors are the ones that say, this changed my life. The mentors.
yeah, I've heard.
So,
Yeah, I mean, that example. Go ahead.
Part of
Mr.
that program at one time at Irons, as a matter of fact. My question is, what frustrated me with the program, speaking candidly, was that I only had an hour with that kid once a week, and it was during lunchtime, and we got to converse about some things, but it was hard for me to engage that kid because I wanted that kid to participate in some of the same activities as my kid and that kind of thing, but we had liability constraints and so forth. So it was very difficult for me to be more in-depth engagement and understand, because once he leaves me, he goes back to his house, and I know it may have been impactful for him. I'm not saying, not discounting that, but it's frustrating for me to not be able to, take it further as opposed to what we're doing is 1 hour a day, 1 hour a week during lunch, and try to get the kid to open up to me during that time. It was just difficult, especially in the school setting.
So what we often see, one of the most powerful pieces of this program is the longitudinal relationship, right? So it starts in elementary, run for 6, 7, 8 years to the point where the men, there's boundaries that have to be in place, right?
Yeah,
There has to be
I
boundaries.
understood that.
But there are many of these relationships that turn into the mentor being a part of the mentee's family and the opposite, right? Where it truly becomes a partnership with the parent to help make a difference. He talks about, my dad does this, and I remember I met this young man who my dad worked with when he was in 6th grade, and when I first talked to the kid, he said, I heard you're I met him, and he goes, yeah, Mr. Knoll's gonna be my mentor for a while. I said, no, son, you don't understand. Like, this guy's gonna be on you the rest of your life. Like, you don't get how this works. And that's that point. Like, over time, it turns into a different deal where, they're taking them to college choices and moving them into college and taking them to orientation. All of those things happen. So you see, but a lot of it builds over time. So that's the power.
That's a fair point. I mean, I was only involved for 2 years.
Yeah.
And so this past year, given the restrictions in place in schools and stuff, was this put on hold? Or could the mentors come into the schools?
well, we tried to do Zoom, we tried to do a lot of things, but
Okay.
so the mentors on the outside, they make sure the kids were participating. If they were virtual, a lot of the kids, we didn't have school for a while. And so the mentors maintain a relationship, phone calling, making sure that the family had food. And we got some referrals that some families needed for us to bring them sizable amounts of food. And one of the other groups that I would like to mention to you is the community in schools. The community in schools, their contract, they do a lot of the things that we do, and what do I mean by that? That they look for resources for our families. They're like mini counselors. They help the counselors. And we have 20 community in schools in our school district, 20 of them. And one of the main things that they did during the pandemic was food distribution. They're like this with the Montgomery County Food Bank, and they did food distributions in East County, Conroe. I mean, I tell you, I could not believe the line of cars for those food distributions. I took a video of one of them. I counted 217 cars parked almost on the side of the road and Cane Creek. And this is after 2 hours of, in other words, a lot of those cars were gonna get a rain check. So the community in schools, they do a great job. They work great with our counselors. And I wanna let you know that Dr. Tamika Taylor started as a community in schools in Houston. I don't know, but she is one of our great supporters. And we tell all the CIS, see what you can become? See? So.
And how many of those do we have? How many?
20.
Yeah, and that, Chris, you want to talk about that funding just a little bit? Because they're really a bargain for us.
So it's a grant program, and it's state funded partially, and so we match. So basically, it's a very affordable. In fact, we have like 4 of those are on ESSER.
Yes, sir.
They got
Four of them,
16, and so you just recently did contracts for communities in schools, so it's a very reasonable cost. In some ways, I wish they made more, but then it would cost us more, but it is a very affordable program, and it's allowed us to keep expanding over the years. We started with just a couple of schools, probably 20 years ago, and we've been adding slowly.
And are those CISs, they receive the same benefits as a full-time Conroe ISD employee?
They're not full-time employees, and so that's one of the negatives. They're hourly, or they're contracted, but they work for communities and schools.
They work
So
for the organization.
They're contracted employees for us, and so they're not on
So
our
they don't
payroll.
receive any benefits?
They're not on our benefits.
Yeah.
Do they receive benefits from that?
No.
Not this particular group, no, they don't.
Dr. Knoll, I remember we were in one of the elementary schools, and this was happening, and the professional had the kids' backpacks together, and we're putting the food in it, and I just was so touched by the process, and also appreciative about how discreet it was as well. Yeah, so the kid doesn't feel like singled out, and I think it's just a very valuable program that's in place.
They're wonderful. And like Dr. Hines mentioned, I wish they made more. Now, some of them we have converted to teachers. Like they're in that position for a few years. And actually, one that Hartwell hired as a teacher that was at Washington and at Stockton was a teacher of the year a few years after he was the community and schools person for me at Conroe High. He went on to become a teacher. So, you see that heart for kids, but, having that social worker in the building is a great thing.
Yeah.
Mr. Williams?
Ms. Chavez, not that you guys don't have enough to do, but is there any way for if the community, do we have an assessment of the needs of some of these kids? For instance, the homeless kids or some other kids, not necessarily to the extent that they're homeless, somewhere where if community members wanted to contribute, that they can funnel through that site and they can, if you need 5 coats and, we can kind of
Yes.
get 5 coats. Is there somewhere easily accessible to a link, if you will,
Yes.
that we can easily distribute to folks that
Yes, sir.
want to donate, want to give, but they just, don't know how?
There's an app called Proposity.
Got kids?
Yes. Scott Kidd helped. That's the one that Scott really
Correct.
championed. Yes.
So, once you download that application, Mr. Williams, you will receive an email that says, this family needs 3 jackets or 3 pair of shoes or sizes this, that, and you will be glad that you joined with that app because you'll be able to purchase those things, and there will be mail by Amazon directly to the family.
And can you, what was that again? Can you
Yes, sir.
distribute that?
You'll get that link,
All right,
sir.
now.
I know where to find you.
And we'll just want to make sure, I know sometimes there was a while there that the app was giving us trouble. We weren't able to upload. Are we able to upload
Yeah,
again?
we're
Like,
okay.
we have a full slate of our needs?
What happens over the summer? Like, what happens to like kids that are, families that are food insecure, like what happened?
We did a lot of food distribution during the summer. I mean, we keep track with those families. We have, what happens is the people that work in this department, they have a heart. So their school year does not end when they go on vacation. I get a lot of calls because they know that I am still working, and they ask for, this family needs this family needs that. For example, about the backpack, there's sometimes you hear that there's some kids that are embarrassed about getting that, so we have the CIS actually taking the food home. So it is that kind of heart that carries through the summer. And I mean, we do a lot of things. We do a lot of things to make sure that the kids are healthy, and that was going to lead me to my next item. But before I go there, I wanna talk to you about the parent and family engagement liaisons. Our principals, they chose 13. They hired 13 parent liaisons and 4 family engagement liaisons. And this is telling you that we want to bring the families, we want to develop relationships with the families. It means that our principals know the importance of having that family as a partner in their children's education. So, and I want to also point out to the right, if you see, Mr. Sanders, that some of those are ESSER 3 monies and title money. So we take advantage of those funds to be able to better our programs, and hopefully we will keep those for years to come.
These family engagement liaisons, Dr. Taylor, was this something we put in place in Houston for the improvement plan there?
Yes.
We
Yeah,
started
okay.
out 3
Yeah.
years ago with the parent and a family liaison at Houston. That was a
Okay.
very successful
Rung a bell.
program, yes.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, that led us to believe that that was a great investment,
Yeah, yeah.
because Sam Houston was the only campus that had a family engagement. And guess what happened at San Jacinto Elementary? The CIS now is a CISD family engagement.
Okay.
He was doing such a great job, the principal saw that, I want to keep this guy, and moved him to a position in her department, in her school. So it is a great opportunity to get families involved, engaged. And the last thing I want to talk to you about is our partnerships with, like, for example, Lone Star Family Health Center, Lone Star College, and Wood Forest Bank. We're very proud to all the things that we're doing in East County. Wood Forest Bank, the Community Outreach Department, is working with Lone Star Family Health Center and developing a coalition to better serve, to improve the community as a whole in the Grangerland and the East County. It is an area that we know have tremendous need, and very proud to develop those relationships. And this relationship with Lone Star Family Health Center, I have been on the board for 20 years, and Denise Cipolla here, she is also serves on the board. And it was crucial, Dr. Knoll, you know, with the COVID vaccine, the moment that on a Wednesday, we got word that we could offer it to our educators, and by Friday, we were vaccinating 2,500 employees at Wood Forest. So those are the relationships that we have fostered throughout the years, and very proud of those.
They've stepped in, like when we've needed to get students physicals for sports or
Or dental work even?
dental work.
Dental work, I get calls from the nurses saying, so-and-so is in my toothache. You know how it is. You got to do something about it. And the clinic, I text the dentist, they're in. So it is a great relationship that we have, and one that we're very proud of. And if you remember, in Milam, behind Milam, we have a Lone Star Family Health Center in Grangerland. And thanks to you, thanks to all of you, and because the need is tremendous in that community, and transportation is an issue. So We took the clinic over there. Any questions?
I mean, the numbers were really impressive that you started us out with, the dropout and attendance, super impressive, and all of these programs, like, I'm glad we're addressing the needs that are in our community. Is there something you would say that we should do more? Like, is there something else that you think would, make a difference, right?
Well, we are who we are because of your support. So you're doing what you're asking the right questions, and it seems to me like you want to do what's right. So I don't have anything to ask from you. I just want to applaud you for the work that you've done so far, supporting the community that needs it the most. And sometimes they're very difficult to love children out there, but we continue to support them because they are the ones that need us the most, and it is because of your support. Dr. Knoll, because of your leadership, your support. Dr. Hines, because of your support. Dr. Taylor, and you can go on and on. This is the team. Kim Earthman, whom you're going to hear from, and we've been working together for years before this MTSS or whatever. We've been working together. We've been working together. So it is because of your support that we are where we are. And you saw it, the dropout rate is. So thank you for your time.
I want to add, you got a commercial to make.
Oh, yes.
But before he does that, I'll share this. A long time ago, and Rod and I go way back, but Mr. Chavez and I have known each other a long time and worked together a long time, and he probably remembers this. At one point, I sat him down and I said, you know what? You're also the director of very difficult cases. And he took that personally, and he stepped up, because we did at the time, we just didn't have much. And over time, we've been able to piecemeal the department together and really build it up, and mostly with grants. And the one thing I would offer or ask you to keep in mind, is when these grants go away, we do need to step up and keep these programs going. And
That's right.
Because
I agree with
they
that.
are essential to keeping kids in school, getting them to come to school, get their education, and achieve their full potential. So I'll let you do your commercial.
Before you do that, I think Mr. Sanders had a.
I was just going to add, to Ms. Chase's comment, we have partners with Montgomery County Food Bank as well as Tri-County Behavioral Health Center and some others out there that help our students as well. And I think just as board members, we can encourage community people to support those endeavors. I actually serve on the Tri-County Behavioral Health Foundation Board, where we help raise funds just to support the consumers that use the Tri-County services. And so I think there's a lot of great opportunities out there for us, both as individuals and because of our influence as board members, to encourage others in our community to help support those endeavors as well, which in turn helps support Conroe ISD and the students of Conroe ISD.
I like to say kudos to your staff, and I always appreciate the passion you bring to what you do, man. It's phenomenal, and it seems like you never get tired. So.
No, it's great. I mean, I remember a few years ago, I went to Carrie and I said, Carrie, Tri-County, we need Tri-County, and Carrie made it happen, She made it happen. So we are a team. We all listen to one another, and I know the guys are gonna give me heck when they say, why didn't you ask? They gave you a chance. This case gave you a chance. But we're just gonna leave that for another time. I want to invite you on April the 21st, and it's going to be at the new Jet Center. We're behind the Wood Forest Stadium. This time, hopefully we'll be able to sit everyone, because in the past, it was getting to the point that 800 people were showing up across the street, and it was
Standing room only.
yeah. And but anyway, it's going to be our Hispanic Achievement Celebration, and this is going to be the 20th year, and the person that keeps track of this is Harwell Brown. He's been to every one of them.
Oh, wow.
And so thank you very much. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you, Rod.
So as they mentioned, Rod's he's in charge of difficult cases, so that he's the lifeline when the principal's out there and there's no other answer for a kid, Rod's the answer. So if we could take a 5-minute break,
Sure.
and we're gonna run over, I'm just telling you now, but it's good stuff. So, if that means you need to get another banana pudding, go, do what you gotta do, but we've got more good information for you.
Alrighty.
you know, as I mentioned a while ago, I apologize. I know we're going to run over, but that's based on really two good things. One, great discussion, and two, really passionate people about what they do, and they get to share, and that's exciting. So we will try to keep it moving. We have two presentations remaining, and we're going to start with Denise Sapola talking about counseling. And one of the benefits for guidance and counseling is you probably get more opportunities to share with you all than most of these other departments do. So we'll try to move through Denise's, certainly ask and answer any questions you have. And then our last piece will be from Kim Earthman, which has got some really quality content that will answer Mr. Hubert's question from earlier. And so we'll go from there. So we'll start with Ms. Sapola.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening.
The Texas Comprehensive Guidance Model names counselors as no longer solo practitioners working in isolation, but as educational leaders who are responsible for the coordination and collaboration with all stakeholders to facilitate the optimal development of all students. So a challenge for counselors is the inability to have access to students for delivering the guidance curriculum component of a comprehensive program. This would enable us to impact more students one at a time with skills and strategies, more than one at a time, with skills and strategies which support them, and those things become habits, which then they develop more capacity to face life's challenges. Currently, more of this type of guidance is delivered through individual conferencing or individual conversations, one student at a time. There are very specific counselor TEKs, I call them, but they're in the education code, and they are this is a challenge to find the platform for us to deliver these educational pieces. CISD employs 173 school counselors. This number has risen by 15 counselors from last year, and we're truly very, very grateful. And I thank you for your continued support, for the respect, and for the value that you place in each of us. They work daily to deliver the key components of the Texas School Mental Health Promotion, as is cited in the Texas Education Code 38.351. These components are an early mental health prevention and intervention, substance abuse prevention and intervention, suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention, grief-informed and trauma-informed practices, positive behavior interventions and supports, positive youth development, and positive, safe, and supportive school climates. And lastly, building skills related to managing emotions, establishing and maintaining positive relationships, and responsible decision-making. So again, these are in Texas Education Code, it's Chapter 38, and that requires LEAs to develop policies and procedures for each of these key components for mental health promotion. Guidance and counseling is focused on prevention topics that develop student resilience and coping strategies. We feel investing in these skills builds a stronger child and then transfers to skills employed by stronger adults and an overall stronger community. We are offering enhanced professional development on mental health topics for all staff this year. We're also offering additional parent education or parent universities and other training opportunities to make our whole community stronger. Some of these are district-wide offerings, and others are zone-specific or even campus-specific opportunities. There is a rise in the mental health support, the referrals, and the strategies for staff in every department. These supports are delivered by our campus counselors, as well as 2 district crisis specialists, our mental health specialist, and myself. We're very, very grateful for the Employee Assistance Program, our EAP. CISD utilizes SupportLink, which is free to our employees. This program offers confidential professional support and resources at no cost to our employees and their families, including any member of their household up to age 26, whether or not that adult child lives in the household. Concerns that an EAP help are anxiety, anger management, depression, family counseling, grief, job stress, marital concerns, stress management, substance abuse, work-life balance, But Support Link provides anytime, day or night, 365 days a year. It includes legal and financial resources, nutrition, wellness, home buying, exercise and wellness, travel and leisure, consumer tips, and so much more. So a reminder goes out to the employees weekly in our CISD newsletter about this fabulous resource provided in our Employee Assistance Program. And they are embracing it. They're using it, and we're hearing back that it really has helped so many of our staff.
That's available for all staff?
All staff.
Okay.
And that's whether or not you actually take the district's insurance as well.
Yeah, okay, awesome.
In order to provide resources available to all, counselors in all schools are creating and maintaining robust websites, and this increases easy access to help our community. There's been an increase in the number of community organizations who want to support our campuses with students and families in need of material supports, like donations of school supplies and back-to-school clothing, holiday food and gift supports, Wood Forest Bank, and Rack Room Shoes, the Assistance League, Crisis Assistance Center, Interfaith of the Woodlands, YMCA, United Way, Montgomery County Food Bank, their mobile food markets, and their Buddy Backpack program. Campus clubs and/or community organizations, as well as area churches, are adopting our campuses. That's one thing Mr. Williams asked about is how can you help support? And we have people reaching out all the time looking to adopt a campus, and I kind of keep track of that and who's needing those types of supports. That's in addition to Proposity, of course. We are seeing a turning of the times with some church mission projects focusing on our community rather than focusing out of country or out of area. So they're contacting us and saying, how can we help you? Where is support needed? And we need it. This is just really magnificent. We have student-created organizations that are providing support as well, like Matthew's Birthday Wish. Matthew's a 9th grader now, and it started 6 years ago when I first met him back with Dr. Stockton. And he and his family provide weekly food support for several of our campuses. They also provide first aid kits and hygiene kits. His sister founded Ashley's Closet, and she's a college student in Tennessee this year, but Matthew's continuing her endeavors with Ashley's Closet, and they provide clothing as well as like formals for homecoming and for proms with the makeup and shoes and everything for the families that reach out to them. And we also have Be Blessed, which was founded by Bailey Cohort. And they each have a passion, both Matthew, Ashley's Closet, Bailey have a passion for helping others, for responding to the needs of their peers. And then, of course, Bailey's project is she provides loaded backpacks of school supplies, shoes, hygiene kits, and she does this throughout the year to students in need. This serves as a role model, not only for other students, but for the adults alike. We've seen more involvement, more support from a lot of our adults too, through the model of these kiddos. Essential to the support of our families are the community health, mental health partnerships that we have. As was mentioned by Mr. Sanders, the Tri-County Behavioral Health, they provide on-campus mental health at 4 school sites. This year, or last year in the 2021 school year, they served 3,653 student contacts. It's already pretty high this year as well with the needs. We also have a memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, that enables many other Tri-County clients to be seen during the school day. And this is very beneficial because many of our families who are able to do this lack transportation or cannot miss work in order to get their child to an appointment. And frequently what we saw is the kiddos who would leave to go to an appointment wouldn't come back to school, so they missed the full day, got them further behind academically. So with the services being provided by Tri-County on campus, we're seeing less discipline referrals, less behavior concerns, and those skills, as well as some being therapeutic or counseling appointments, have really built stronger students. And then that is, we're seeing the Tri-County starts at elementary with a couple of our elementary schools, moves with them to junior high, And though they don't have a site at the high school, Caney Creek High School is the zone, they don't have a site there, one of the Tri-County people is in an office space or a classroom 3 days a week seeing students full-time, even though it's not technically one of their sites. Because the Tri-County does operate at a $50,000 loss per year per site that they are enabling us to have services with. So keep working on them, continuing that project too, Mr. Sanders, we need that. So, Yes to Youth, Montgomery County Youth Services provides therapeutic support groups, and that can be requested, students request, our campuses request the topic grief, anger management, divorce, anxiety. A lot of those types of things are done with Yes to Youth groups on our campus. Mr. Chavez mentioned Lone Star Family Health, which provides medical and dental care, as well as vaccinations and mental health services, both in the Grangerland Clinic as well as our Conroe and Spring clinic locations. Senate Bill 11 addresses Texas Child Mental Health Care Consortium, and CISD receives services from the Texas Child Health Access through telemental health. We call it TCHAT. So TCHAT is a telemental health that our students have access to. They can choose that as one of the possible referrals they could go to. What it has really done is it's shortened that window because it's telemental health. If a family or child, the family chooses that, they could get almost an immediate appointment with either psychiatrist or psychologist to address their mental health need, as opposed to the several weeks waiting list it can be in Montgomery County right now. And TCHAT has just delivered 3 laptop computers that are part of that program. Again, that's through Senate Bill 11, and we'll be getting that out to 3 of our high school campuses and starting that on-site laboratory for those 3 campuses probably within the next month.
Ms. Cipolla, how can
Yes.
Students and or families access the TCHAT?
So what they do is go, if they have a presenting concern with their counselor, the counselor would offer 3 or more possible interventions or resources for them. If they, and they're explained with a brochure what TCHAT is. If they choose TCHAT, there will be a room on that campus, and then we will have been trained, of course, how to access with these laptops, and they'll be able to have that visit right then.
Okay. When do we anticipate that will begin?
About, I would say within the next month, where we have the technology now, we have to provide the training and make sure how it's going to work on the campus level.
Okay. Yeah. And is that for a certain grade level?
It's going to be at high schools, 3 of our high schools. Okay. Now, after that initial appointment, the meetings can happen at home. And so once they get all the paperwork done and they become a client of TCHAT, those can be at school, certainly, or at home. Right now, all of our students have access to the at-home telemental health. And it is one of the referral resources all of our counselors give. In the last probably 2 years, we've had in the neighborhood of about 50 students who have chosen the telemental health through the TCHAT program.
Okay.
They're
Those
just
are all
now
licensed
doing.
Texas counselors?
Sorry?
Those are all licensed Texas counselors?
Yes, they are. They're from Baylor. It's a partnership with Baylor College of Medicine. So some are professors,
Gotcha.
licensed counselors there. Yeah, a variety of backgrounds that are running that program.
Okay.
So, is the program, do we only have ability to provide for 3 high schools versus
That's all they
6?
give me, yeah. But we can do that, right? We can still provide it. They're providing 3 laptops and the access of that kind of on-site laboratory, with those 3 campuses. I don't know if they'll expand that program. I'm hoping they will. There are a few partnerships with TCHAT in each region. They are in all of the regions in Texas.
Okay.
So, I think it was originally designed for rural mental health.
Oh, I see.
And we were lucky that they knew, because of Dr. Null and y'all, that we value mental health. And so we were approached at the very beginning, about 3 years ago, when it all first, it was like, do you want to do this? Plus one of the doctors, Dr. Laurel Williams, is a mom in the Woodlands. And so, and she is tied to Austin and the whole initiative. So I think she was kind of favored us as well, which was great. We got this opportunity.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
How do we roll these out? I mean, how do we determine what schools we roll them out to?
We looked at the volume of the report that you all saw, which was recently. We've been tracking data of the high incidence at-risk type of interventions that counselors have been doing. So we looked at the volume as well as the transport issues or not having available resources. And so the campuses that were chosen for this initial project is Conroe High, Caney Creek High School, and Oak Ridge High School. And so those are the three that are going to have the T-Chat labs with a computer, though everyone has access to the T-Chat program. And so if I were talking with a student right now, they said, yes, I want to do T-Chat, and I'd say I'm from one of the other schools, then immediately the referral can happen. They could still have an appointment that day or the very next day. So
They just have to have internet connection.
yeah, just have to have internet connection and that first meeting that does all the paperwork part. Right.
Very good.
Counselor challenges this year are time. Needs are high and time is scarce. More suicide outcries are being reported and at much younger ages. There's a sharp increase in anxiety and stress, an alarming number of parents who are afraid of their children. There are severe financial needs of families, a sharp rise in grief due to the deaths of family members, and CPS reporting is up. The climate and culture on our campuses, as well as our relationships that the counselors develop with their students, the parents, and the staff, are essential in helping connect these people, these individuals, with their resources. Our counselors are truly extraordinary. Our responsive services, exemplary. And our commitment to the individual child is at the very core of each of our school counselors' being. Mr. Williams, you have a question.
I'm sorry, back up, I got stuck on something. If we're assessing the kids and we're providing the counseling and the emotional support of the kids, the mental health of the kids, how do we get to the point where the parents are, or we're now assessing that the parents are afraid of the kids? How do we get to that?
We have a number, because we are trying to help embrace the mental health of our whole community, more and more parents are reaching out to our school counselors. And they are reaching out.
So we're providing counseling for the parents as well?
We're providing resources for them, not counseling, but we are providing and connecting them with resources.
If we're providing resources for them to go externally and get the resources, how are we getting that feedback?
They tell us.
They're-
It's direct.
They're calling
They
us and
direct
telling
call us.
us.
They
and
call.
tell us
They
that.
call us and tell us.
They call and tell us that they're locking themselves in their room at night because they're afraid their child is going to hurt them while they sleep. And they ask us for help of how to help their child.
Okay.
Same thing happens with our school nurses. A lot of families use our school nurses as their family
I didn't
doctor.
know that. That's good information.
I really,
Thank you.
I get emotional when I think about it. It makes me very proud that people know that they could go to their school counselor
Oh, that's great.
whenever they have a need and find a resource that can help their family. They're doing what I've always hoped they would do, and it's working. So it's
great
scary,
job.
but it's working.
And that, I will say that, you know, we practice in the morning, right? So we go through this process, and that same comment that struck you was one that I circled back to Denise, and it's like, man, that's just jarring to hear that, right? That parent, but that's just a reality.
It
that some
shocked me.
people- Yeah.
Well,
that it's-
and Kim working with that behavior side too, right? We're looking at working from the emotional side of the kid or the parent that reaches us, and then the behavior. We're not just talking about high school students, we're talking about littles.
Yeah.
Mostly littles. Mostly littles.
You talking about elementary age?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes.
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 And a lot of that information also comes as part of like the team that gets together. So if the kid is struggling at school, so if the parents are there, if there's a tri-county worker that the kid has seen, the counselor, the administrator, the teachers, really coming together to try to figure out what is the best resource for that parent and what can we do to help that student. So really a true wraparound approach when we're looking at what some of these students come to us with.
Thank you, I appreciate that. That was very, very helpful for me.
Thank you.
And that's
Now, looking toward the future, something on a more positive note, the College and Career Military Readiness Department is within guidance and counseling, and it's focusing this year on career and technical education pathways, or CTE pathways, and four-year planning well, it's really more like 6-year planning because it starts in junior high. And plotting the direction to certificates and licensures toward graduation. And all of these things promote employability. So college and career centers reach out to students and guide them to explore and consider the possibilities for their futures. All counselors begin very early on in elementary in including career investigation and continuing this guidance each subsequent year. And this guidance focuses on yearly goal setting for the students and families to discuss their plans for post-secondary pathways. With these goals in mind, counselors provide timely information to help students prepare for their futures. And by their junior and senior year, counselors ensure students have access to the correct assessments needed for success. Assessments such as the ASVAB, industry-based certificates, college admissions exams, and the like. College and career military readiness is also focused on equitable delivery of services, specifically dissecting information and rewriting or revamping to ensure that all includes all. This encompasses the dissemination and clarity of information, as well as our course offerings and career technical programs that are offered district-wide. At the November board meeting, you'll be updated on the progress of CCMR within the district by Mr. Colshan. So tremendous strength from our team has come due to the counseling department being incorporated into the Department of Student Support Services. Our director, Kim Earthman, will talk about MTSS, PBIS, and social emotional learning.
Awesome.
You have a question?
I have a couple
I
of
see it
questions,
coming.
I'm sorry. So my first one, I think Ms. Earthman's going to help address regarding social emotional learning. So one of the questions I have for you, Ms. Pope, is that in the recently 87th legislature changes, 80% of a counselor's workday is supposed to be spent doing counseling and guidance.
Yes, sir.
And if not, then there's got to be some sort of a discussion about that. Can you tell me, of the 173 counselors that we have, are 80% of their workday going towards counseling and guidance?
Absolutely.
Okay.
We met as a team and talked about that. Dr. Hines and I spent several discussions on that, in fact. And that is designed, one of the pieces of that is that testing for a lot of districts is what takes counselors away from their ability to counsel.
Correct.
And we, fortunately,
Yes.
many years ago, ceased with that taking up so much of a counselor's time and keeping us with kids.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The other question I had was regarding the slide you had regarding the Texas Education Code
Yes.
38.351. As I understand it, managing emotions, teaching resiliency, and coping strategies are all part of what we are required to do. Am I mistaken?
Yes, it is, and that is a lot of what
Yes, sir.
Kim will focus on and
All right.
some work that we've done in the past
Then
week
I'll-
or so, and I think you have handouts about it.
Yes, then I'll withdraw and wait. Let
Thank
Ms.
you.
Earthman
Withdraw.
finish.
That's a good question.
I know.
Great question.
And here's a handout that references each law and rule.
So when you reference the new bill in regards to our counselors, we didn't really have to transition much with our time. We had already done that
We
years
did
ago.
that many years ago with all of your support and with the, we have testing coordinators on many of the campuses, and so staffing has been done so that counselors will assist.
Right.
The counselors are not directly responsible for. And even those who have heavy testing or other duties like that still fall well with, 80% plus of time that they're spent directly with kiddos.
We did a time study last spring, 3 random days, and the counselors tracked their time, basically what they were doing in 30-minute increments.
Yes.
And so we didn't even, it wasn't even coming close to that. So we were very excited that that wasn't going to impact us.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Ms. Earthman, I just passed out your handouts, maybe you
Oh,
can
okay.
reference what that was.
Yes, I'll refer to you. We're going to talk about social emotional learning in just a few minutes, but I want to preface it by just talking about a couple of the other things that we've had in place for a while as part of student support services. But what we have done with all of the work, whether it's positive behavior interventions and supports, response to intervention, and our social emotional learning, all of that is in accordance to law. So it is state law, Texas Education Code, and then our board policy, along with their commissioner's rules. So what we wanted to do is go through and really show you, and you have that information as well, to show when those topics are brought up, where that is cited in law. So actually, I give full credit to Denise Griffin and Lindsay Taylor. They put this chart together in 2 days for us to make sure that you guys have that accurate information. But I do want to just go through and highlight a few of the things that really does lay the work before we talk about social emotional learning. The first handout you have is actually talks about MTSS. And so that's going to go through a little bit about what PBIS is, and yes, it should say MTSS at the top.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah. Before I do that, let me go through our team. So it's myself, and then Denise Griffin is our coordinator. We have 14 amazing instructional coaches that are at the district level that go out and support our campuses in all of these endeavors that we're going to talk about. 12 of them directly go to the campuses, and then we have 2 that actually are ESSER funded this year that support our foster care population. So we work with Mr. Chavez and Denise and work with the counselors on campuses for a lot of our students who come to us that are in residential treatment centers. So that really provides some extra, they provide extra support for that student and for that campus as well. We also have some campus-based positions. So we have academic interventionists. They're not directly under me, but we help support them. Many of those are ESSER funded. We have 51.5 this year. Instructional behavior coaches, that's a relatively new position. So we're trying to build their capacity on the campus so they are able to deal with some of the students who are struggling with behavior, but more working with the teachers. We also have positive behavior intervention and support liaisons. So this is a behavior interventionist, but they also work with the families, they work with the counselors, they work with the CIS, and then they might work with outside agencies as well to help those students. Okay, so I'd like to talk to you about one of my favorite things, which is school-wide positive behavior interventions and supports. So this is called Foundations. Foundations really is where we started 8 years ago to start building a more positive climate and culture in our schools. So what it looks like in our schools is our schools send campus teams led by the administrator. It's made up of teachers, counselors, administrator, and they come and receive professional learning throughout the summer and then throughout the rest of the year. It does focus on things like structure. So when you walk the halls, you might see signs up that say one way. And so it helps the kids know which way they're going in the halls. Or you might see signs that say guidelines for success. Those are things like respect and honesty and things that are going to guide our schools. The other thing you will see is like expectations throughout. So these are our hallway expectations. These are our cafeteria expectations. Hopefully we hear teachers interacting positively with students and saying things like walk and talk, which is a great correction to say, come on, let's get moving, instead of yelling at kids and, oh God. We want to walk and talk. You also might see things like they do this. It means one ear. Our expectation is that when you walk through the halls, you're only going to have one headphone in, if they allow that at their schools. So it really provides consistency for our teachers to be able to help correct students in schools. It provides our students to really understand what those expectations are, how they are taught, how we practice them, and it's a very intentional instructional focus when we're looking at behaviors. Excuse me. The other part of that is not just about the structure, the rules, the consequences, things that are going to happen in school, but it is also about building relationships with kids. So we know the number one thing that keeps kids in school is school connectedness. So how do we build relationships with students? For some teachers and some adults, it comes very naturally. Other times we have to work on it, and we have to provide some guidance and help teachers understand, like, if we don't get to this student, then we can't have other conversations that might take that relationship to have. And so one of the things that campuses have done, actually Mr. Brown did it when he was principal at Washington, it's called the power of being seen. And so they take rosters of all of the kids in the school and put them down the hallway, and the teachers and the other adults in the building go through and they make a check if they know the kid by name or face. They put a heart if they know something personal about that student. They put a star if they know something academically about that student. And I think it's a plus if they know something about that kid's interest or hobbies. So when you look at that, you can look at the kids who maybe they don't have connectedness to any adult in that campus. And so it helps the campus understand there's a group of kids that we might not see. They might be the kids that come in every day, do what they're supposed to do, and sit back at the back of the class and then leave, and they're fine. They don't cause trouble, they don't raise a ruckus, but who's connecting with that kid? And so that is one of the powerful things of foundations, is that we have to build those strong relationships with students. It also provides for a much safer building and climate, but then moving forward, it really helps with preventing behavior problems, preventing dropouts, as well as things like self-harm and reducing self-harm. Yes, sir.
So I guess a question more for Dr. Brown. I'm sorry, Mr. Brown Hartwell. What did you do to connect to those kids?
I'm sorry.
How did you connect to the kids?
Well, the biggest was teachers would say they would make a purpose to engage with that student the next time they saw them in the class. You know, maybe call on them more, or maybe there's lunch, come in and let's talk or something. Because usually these are the kids that quiet, they never say a word, but they actually do need our teaching as adults, and it made a positive impact on our campus.
They also that day had different stations for the teachers. It was during a professional development day, and the teachers, and it was teacher-led, so the foundations team led the activity with the help of the district coach, and they went around to say, this is how we can intentionally build relationships with kids, and really explicitly helping the teachers understand how we can do that, how to work with that kid that's hard to work with. How do we make sure that we are reaching all of those kids? So Mr. Brown spent that entire day on how the power of relationships and how that helps build school climate and culture and safety and helps our kids achieve. Yes.
Yeah, I like it too. My questions are, for that particular project where you put the pictures up, what grade level? I'm assuming the junior high? Is it the junior high? And how long did you have those pictures up? Like throughout the year, or was it a certain, like for a week?
And we had them that day, then we kept them in the lounge, and then people, as they got to know people, they got to go and check off. We wanted by the end of the school year for every child to have some interaction with an adult, so we got everybody covered.
And the kids come by there too, or is it just for the teachers to see? Got it, okay. That answers the rest of my questions.
And they've taken it and scaled it down to where it's not the whole building sometimes, but for some of our larger schools, they'll do it with teachers just in their classroom. So if you think of our high schools, how many kids come through there in a day? So they'll take that and do that to their high schools.
And I wanted, and I probably should have set the table a little bit, probably 10 years ago, and Kim alluded to it, we started down this road really looking at, we started seeing some things with behaviors. There was the big push about addressing bullying in our campuses. And all that was kind of coming in, and we realized we needed better systems of support for our schools, right? And we needed something that we all agreed upon, that we said, this is our plan, this is the way we want to address it. And that's how we got started in this role, really with PBIS. And it's really come a long way, and it's a work in progress, but they've done great work.
Yes, we now have all of our campuses, it's taken us 8 years, but all of our campuses have gone through, and it's not just a 1 year and then you're done. It's a continuous process. So we provide training and support for them in the summer for the campus teams, and then our amazing district coaches go out and they meet with the teams, as well as we do building walks and give them feedback on different areas. So it really helps with professional learning as well. So that's kind of the foundation of what we do. Yes, ma'am.
I like it. I like the conscious inclusion too. Question, is foundations like a homegrown framework, or is this something we've taken from a larger process? Or
so yeah, that's it. We did a lot of research on different people who did this, and so we went with Safe and Civil Schools. So it is a company, Dr. Randy Sprick is kind of a guru in behavior, very down to earth. He started off as a special ed paraprofessional, and he founded this company. And so we have worked with them. So we bring in a consultant who we work with first. We went and saw her and made sure the message aligned with Conroe ISD. We meet with her beforehand to make sure that message aligns with what we would like. And then she comes in and she trains our campuses. So she provides the initial training. Actually, she trains them for 3 years. And then after that 3 year, then our team takes over and provides that additional training for them.
Okay, good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? So the second piece of that, after we look at our school-wide systems, are our classroom management systems. And right along with what Dr. Hines said, classroom management had become a pretty big issue, and we didn't have solid research-based things to do and help teachers. And so using the same material out of Safe and Civil Schools for classroom management, we started looking at what do we need to do better to support our teachers. Teachers cite one of the number one reasons for leaving the classroom is behavior. And I think people outside of education would be very, very surprised at some of the behaviors that we deal with in schools on a daily basis.
And particularly with young children, I think what people, the eye-opening part for me is how many of these cases were coming from very early grades in schools. And it was eye-opening, and certainly it was an area that we needed to come in and really help teachers with.
So we started looking at all of the research and knowing that effective classroom management is essential for kids to learn. If we don't have good classroom management, there can't be good instruction, and there can't really be good instruction if there's not good classroom management. We also know that one size does not fit all, so we cannot buy one program that's going to fit all of our teachers in our district. So instead, we went with a framework. It really helps guide our teachers to making decisions in their classroom, because our teachers are different too, and that's what makes them so wonderful. And so we don't want to tell them, you must, you shall do this, 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 this. Instead, we talk about, so we got to have rules in the classroom. We need to have rules. So, but as the teacher, you set those rules. What are your expectations and rules in the classroom? Really talking about how we look at it instructionally instead of just, I'm going to tell you and you better do it. Because kids are a lot different today than when many of us were in school. And so really having that mutual respect built within the classroom is essential for it to be successful. We want teachers to, again, start with structure. So knowing what their limits are, knowing what's going to be essential for kids to be successful in their classroom, and then teach the kids that. So if I know that when I'm talking, we shouldn't get up and sharpen our pencil, the kids shouldn't have to guess that. We should be able to tell the kids and say, so during class discussion, these are my expectations. So we never tell teachers what their expectations should be. We just tell them that they need to know them with great clarity and implement them with great consistency and help them build that plan of support. Also, setting up those positive relationships with students is key. So to address one of the things that you said, Mr. Hubert, I think a lot of those difficult conversations come and become disrespectful sometimes when we don't have that mutual respect. So building relationships with students in the classroom goes a long way. It's kind of why you'll see, and teachers will talk about it a lot, there'll be one teacher and one kid. This kid might misbehave in every other classroom that he goes into. But when he goes into Miss Taylor's class, she has built a relationship, it is solid, and he behaves and does what he's supposed to do. So I believe that's where it starts. Without having these things, without having expectations, without building relationships, without helping kids understand why it's important, and then us understanding there are some kids in our class that this is the very last thing on their mind. And having that empathy for a minute and thinking about it and just opening ourselves up to listen also can help in that endeavor. That's it on that. We do provide professional learning for all new teachers on classroom management before they come in. This year we did an intro to CISD. We do a lot of campus staff development. And then again, our amazing coaches go in and work one-on-one with teachers who might be struggling, who want additional help, who want just feedback to make that classroom management stronger.
So the classroom management training is part of the onboarding process? Okay.
It's a full day.
Awesome. Awesome.
And then our coaches follow up with all of the new teachers, go to their classrooms, check in on them throughout the whole district.
Awesome.
So how is a teacher supported when there is a disruptive student at an early age, or even in our junior and high school level ages? What is done to help support a teacher at that level if it's consistent?
So there really are some multi-tiers to support that teacher and that student, and it kind of depends on the situation, but our administrators work really hard to reach out when, and they also put some things in place first. And so the administrators have an amazing skill level to deal with that in our elementary schools, because it's not something that's brand new, but they do reach out. So they will reach out to me, they reach out to their student support coach, one of the assistant superintendents, and we go and help and develop a plan. So if the student falls under general ed or special ed, we work in both areas. And so we really try to look at either the plan they have in place and is it working? Does the teacher need help implementing it? Or do we need to come up with a new plan?
And one of the way, like I saw it today in one of my campus visits, one of your coaches was in a classroom. So they'll go in and do classroom observation. And they may be watching a particular child, if there's a child in that situation, or they might be, if a teacher's just requesting, like, I need help with my structures, they may be in watching the teacher, but they go in and will observe, and then from there, that's where that plan gets made based on their observation. Like today, like I said, I think they were watching a particular child in the classroom that I was in.
And then in cases where there's an extremely disruptive student, how is the classroom, the students in the classroom, how are they assisted and counseled if a situation arises that's very serious?
We work very closely with our counselors. I mean, that's one great thing about this partnership is we work very closely with our, bless you. We work very closely with our counselors to work with the other students in the classroom. We've also been blessed through some recent positions too, like we have our campus instructional behavior coaches, so we're able to do more on the campus and they're able to do more. And then the teachers also have really a high level of skill in many cases, so they're able to deal with that student while dealing with the other student, the other students in the class as well.
It's very much a continuum, so
Yes.
it just depends, like, different schools are, have different capacities based on their staff to respond and deal with things. Different, depending on the teacher, they might have just different set of skills or different wide range of responses. But that's also what we have, and I know we'll touch base on it. Part of that MTSS model is problem-solving teams. So ultimately, one of the things we work on with all of our students that are, if we're having repeated issues of this, is really how do we get a group together to problem solve, right? How do we get a bunch of people in the room and start talking about what's working, what's not working, thinking about all the connections and ways we can find a solution. And so it's usually not just a one answer fits all. And one of the intentional things, right or wrong, good or bad, one of the intentional parts of the coaches in this department is that they have one foot in special ed and one in general ed, because we don't have boundaries. We have to go and help students. It could be a special needs classroom that needs help and support, and it could be a general ed classroom. It might be a student in a general ed classroom who might be bound for a special needs classroom, but they're not identified yet. But we're going to work through the process of supporting that student, supporting that classroom. So it's very much a kind of a continuum model. I know that sounds like a cop-out answer, but I just want to, it could be a wide range depending on the child, depending on the school, depending on the situation, depending on the people involved, how we might help.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the other things we do is response to intervention, and that is really focusing on academics, academics and behavior when we're talking about different levels of support. So tier 1 is everyone gets it, right? We all get good first tier 1 instruction. Tier 2 is for those kids who might need a pull-out group. They might need some additional help with some targeted skills. Maybe it's a couple of times a week. It might be a push-in. The teacher might do it during the intervention period that they have at the school. And then we have tier 3, which would look like an intensive intervention. So it might be 5 days a week, it might be 4 days a week, it might be a behavioral intervention where I'm getting a social skills group 3 times a week to deal with the behavior that I'm having and practicing those skills. So really it can focus on reading and math mainly when we talk about academics, but then we help support those interventionists when it comes to that continuum of behavior as well. As part of that, this year, well, we have always done in CISD, we've always worked to fill those academic gaps for our students, but in the legislative session, they passed House Bill 4545. And so this is a law that, that has put some requirements into place what we need to do for learning loss. And so we have worked very collaboratively with Dr. Upshaw and the Teaching and Learning Department to really put those things in place. One of the things that we are grateful that we have is a new student platform called Branching Minds. It really looks at the whole child, not just the data piece of it, but also with interventions and supports, and then it helps us track their progress over time. And it's providing to be, while it's a new tool, we look forward to implementing it all the way because it's provided us a lot of the things that we needed to document our progress in House Bill 4545 as well. Okay. As Dr. Hines mentioned, we work with special education as well, with academics and behavior. We've provided a lot of training to build the capacity of our special education teachers. It is a great bridge between special ed and general ed. Like Dr. Hines said, it's not, we can work with any kid and any teacher at any time. So it has provided our department a lot of freedom to do that, and I think the teachers really appreciate it as well. So now we can talk about social emotional learning in Conroe ISD. I know there has been a lot of discussion and about social emotional learning, so I'm really grateful to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you about what social emotional learning is, where it is in the law, and how we've gone about addressing these policies and laws in Conroe ISD. So that's going to be your second document that you have. It's the colorful one that starts out with our I can statements, but I did want to put up all of the things and all of the places just in one place you can see. This is where in the commissioner's rules, in state law, in Conroe ISD board policy, and in Texas Education Code, these are all of the areas in which this is all aligned with. And so this is all of the grounding for when we started this work. We knew that it was very important. Well, it was required by law, so that's why we started the work and started looking at it. It is not something that's brand new. As social emotional learning has been referred to by different names, character education in the past, but as we've grown and we've really looked at really understanding and encompassing that whole child, we know how important it is to really address it, but do so with the grounding of the laws and our policies to make sure we're aligned with that. So we put together what social emotional learning is and what it is not. So you can Google social emotional learning and get a whole lot of stuff. You can get a lot of different opinions. There are so many products out there right now. You can get all of that. But when we started this process, we knew it was important to really align with the laws and the values of our community as well. So I'd like to go through these with you. Social emotional learning in Conroe ISD is helping students build skills related to managing emotions, establishing and maintaining positive relationships, and responsible decision-making to be successful in school. It's using teachable moments to show examples of respect, responsibility, trustworthiness, caring, and good citizenship. It is explicit instruction in those skills. So some students will come to our schools and they don't know how to exhibit those skills maybe in class. So it's explicit instruction. But it is also very important that we have a collaboration for what is taught at home. And again, required by state law, Texas Education Code, board policy, the comprehensive guidance and counseling model, and as well as the commissioner's rules. So what is it not in Conroe ISD? Social emotional learning is not proselytizing or indoctrinating concerning any specific religious or political belief. So that's actually in House Bill 1026, it says that you cannot do that. It is not pushing our personal beliefs on students. It is not critical race theory. And it is not a replacement for those values that are taught at home.
So focusing on the side that it is, could you
Yes.
give me kind of an example of what that might look like in a classroom?
Yes, I can. I would love to. So if you look over to the I can statements, this is kind of our curriculum. So when we started this, one of the things that we wanted to do is make sure, as we looked through the products, we knew that we didn't just want a packaged product. We wanted to really look and develop something that was good for Conroe ISD. So if you look at like 3B, oh, sorry. 3B, it's demonstrating respect for others by displaying good citizenship.
Okay.
So I was in a second grade classroom in an elementary school. One of the TEKs that we have in second grade, and actually it goes all the way through our social studies, is patriotism. That is also required by House Bill 1026 and is in our curriculum when you get deeper into it other than the I can statements. So that is what we do already. We talk about what it is to have patriotism, and that's something that might look like integrated within the curriculum. In high school, that might be in a government class when we're doing a voter registration drive. So those could be very simple integrations into the curriculum, but it kind of goes beyond that as well. When we started this, 2 years ago, we had a district level committee that worked on researching all of these practices. From there, we have about 75 teachers, administrators, counselors, district coaches, ourselves involved in kind of breaking down all of the laws to say what is required that we teach and how are we going to teach it. So we have not only explicit instruction, so that might look like, for instance, on 1B, demonstrate an awareness of my interests, strengths, and areas of growth. So that's a really important thing in kindergarten, and it's a very important thing in high school, right? So these are things that are not just one grade level. So in kindergarten, that might be a lesson on when I color outside the lines, I'm not gonna rip up my paper. That could be the lesson for the day. Where in high school, it might be working with the counselor to look at the different opportunities that a student has and some of the things that they might be missing because they don't see that as strengths in themselves.
Okay. How much levity do the teachers have in their classrooms to implement these guidelines? Or like, do you feel like it's written to where it's a little bit subjective to the teacher in the classroom of what they believe is social emotional learning?
So this is one of the pieces. We actually have not put we did it at the administrators conference to share it with the administrators as well as the counselors. As far as putting it out to all teachers, that has not been done yet. We have broken these down into smaller items. So like if you think about how academic TEKs are written, there's a bigger knowledge statement and then there's academic TEKs as we go farther down. That is how this is broken down, and then we've actually created a playbook for teachers, which is still, this is not a final version. Everything is always in revision to look at, as well as our playbook. So that is something that, yes, teachers are gonna have levity to be able to put to be able to teach it, but we're hoping with professional learning and training, we can help them understand the purpose of this. The purpose of this is to help kids be better in school.
Right. Do they have the ability to, as you said, when you can search online, right? They can search online and you can find different definitions of what this means.
Yes.
Are the administrators or teachers given that levity to go define their own definition of emotional social learning?
Well, I think that's why we have done this process, like through going through and having a committee of people working very closely with the teaching and learning department, working very closely with Dr. Hines and Dr. Knoll, and then also going through our community and parents through our SHAC committee to get them approved, because people can do that. You know, people can just Google whatever they want and pull a lesson.
Right.
It's kind of the same thing for academics when you think about teacher pay teachers. If I want to know how to teach this TEK and I don't like this lesson, I can go in and I can purchase something on teacher pay teachers. So this seems to get more fuel sometimes, but I do think that we can help stop that by
And I'll jump
guide
into
it.
a little bit, you know, when we actually started a student support service department last year, and this is one of the first projects we started working on because of this very issue, because up until now, it's been everybody kind of found their own program or project or group, you know, and most of them are research-based, but there's a lot of variance, and we were all over the place. So this has really been a process of building and creating our own framework that we're rolling out. So you're seeing it now. But we're not in full implementation, but this basically will replace all the different things that are out there. But also to answer your question too, I think there's different layers of this also in a continuum. So there are opportunities to address these kinds of goals and skills through opportunities that I teach every day. So many of these are already embedded in our curriculum. They might be embedded in a language arts curriculum, in an art classroom, in a CTE class in high school, in an English class. So they're already there, and there are already lessons, and they've been there for years. And so that's not new. I think what's new is being more articulating about these are the things that we're doing, and these are the ones that we've kind of vetted and the wording that we use. But whether you're reading a book and there's a moral to the story, we do that, right? Or whether there's something that happened in the newspaper. And so our teachers have great latitude to make those professional decisions, and what we do to train and try to help narrow, like, these are the things that we should be doing. And really kind of going back to, there's always a need for learning, there's always a need for growth. We're going to keep doing that, but for the most part, they do a great job, and we've done a great job for years. But it is in a process that's both, this is already in our curriculum, this might be an add-on specific lesson to teach about patriotism, this might be a specific lesson to teach about how you can be courteous and understand differences. It just depends on the situation. As a high school, and as a high school principal, and I'm sure Mr. Colson can tell you, high schools have a difficult time because you're doing so much and your day is already planned out. So you might do add-on things where you bring in and you have a message that, and we vet the message and we make sure, like, no, drugs are bad for you, right? We're not going to do drugs. And so you have a message and you're playing that school-wide. You might have student council do an educational program where they're pushing a message. And so it comes in different layers and different levels. And I would say that it's embedded both in the existing curriculum, but can be its own standalone lesson as well.
And I'm asking these questions because this is our workshop, this is our opportunity to talk freely, and I appreciate it because, quite honestly, as you've been to our school board meetings, we have had people come talk, and they get confused between what Conroe ISD is implementing as social emotional learning to something called CRT, and to throw myself under the bus here, I had never heard of CRT. I'd never heard of it until, 3-4 months ago when people started coming up. And so then I'm being asked, what's the difference between the two? And honestly, I didn't really have a good answer because I had never heard of CRT. And as I asked the questions, all I hear is, we don't do that. We have this social emotional learning, and a couple of slides back, you even have said, look, social emotional learning that is implemented through Conroe ISD is not CRT, or this critical race theory. So I appreciate the conversation and open it up to the rest of the board to make sure that we understand the difference between the two and this social emotional learning is necessary, and it's something that I certainly support in our classrooms and our teachers because of the diversity that we have, but it shouldn't be confused with a narrative that is not what we're doing. So I appreciate that conversation and hope we can have a more dialogue about it.
And I think you made a good point, if I can just add that it's easy to, you can Google something and take what somebody did somewhere else and then try to apply that to us. That doesn't, because someone else did it, doesn't mean that's what we do, right? So you could find an article that says, you know, some school district somewhere use social emotional learning to bring in CRT or bring in whatever, and I'm sure that's probably happened at some point. That doesn't mean that that's what we do, right? Like we've lined out here very clearly what we do and why we do it, because it's law that we do it. But as Kim mentioned, like part of what we do is to make sure that everything we do aligns with our community, right? Like we understand we're a public school system, for better, for worse, and for us, luckily, it's usually for the better. We are a mirror of our community, right? And so we're going to reflect the good and the bad that happens and the beliefs of our community. So we fit that in. And even to that point, when you go all the way back and talk about new teacher training, we hire in 600 new teachers and they come, you know, we spend 4 days with them teaching them how to be a Conroe ISD teacher, which a lot of that is how we treat kids and how what our community expects from us, you know, and that's part of that whole process. And so that's something I think that we take pride in. It does get frustrating for us when we get, you know, tagged in with something that has nothing to do with us. And that's why we thought too, it was important for us to share with you tonight, what is it that we do? You know, because what we do is really good, and it changes lives. And it doesn't only change the lives of the children that it touches, but it changes all of our lives, because these children grow into adults. They become voters in our community. They become people that live and work here. And I want the people that live here to be able to control their emotions and to be able to appreciate everybody and to be like, I want all of these things for the guy standing behind me in the grocery store line. Like I want that. And so that's what we're trying to build. It's not about, like you said, indoctrinating, or I'm not going to try to say.
I've practiced that word and I got it
gonna try to
right.
say-
So
Yeah,
I said it once, I'm not saying it again.
I have the Invisalign, I'll mess it up, I know I will. But that's not what it is, you know, it's nor is it a replacement for at home, but there's also a reality that a lot of our kids aren't getting some of these things at home. And so, once again, if they're not understanding patriotism from home, we get this opportunity to help embed that. That's a great thing. You know?
I like the idea too, how you said these are for at school. So you're leaving that parental responsibility and or opportunity to those parents to decide how and what they want to teach in their home. So we're really not pushing any message beyond what the law says in the school. And you're leaving that great opportunity for parents to be parents and to teach their children and to raise their children however they choose to do so.
And it creates a great partnership also with parents. I mean, we have lots of parents who come up for help and, you know, just want that partnership to say, hey, I'm seeing this at school, at home. What are you guys doing at school? Are you seeing it? And it creates a common language so we can start to have those conversations and like Dr. Knoll said, help change that trajectory for that child, you know, whether it's 5 or whether it's 15, they're all kids in our system, you know, that we want to help.
Well, and I love the collaboration that you're talking about between those parents and the school, so that, you know, unfortunately, we may have parents that don't know how to parent. And if the school's providing at least some sort of a framework and that parent wants to join or engage with the school to help their child, then that gives them the opportunity through the school to do that at their home and reinforce maybe something that's being taught at school.
A few years ago, we had a little kindergarten class that was quite active, very active. Like every day you started all over again with their behaviors. And we had one of those problem-solving teams, and we sat down and we tried to figure out, okay, well, you know, by the afternoon, it all goes well, and then, gosh almighty, they come in the morning, and here we go again. We start right over. And it dawned on us, it was the parenting skills that were lacking. So we were able, actually, to have parenting classes and every parent in that particular class participated. Once they realized the rules that needed and consistency that needed to happen at home, that partnership worked, and then education could begin. But, I mean, it was just one of those, exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
We also, like Dr. Hines said, this hasn't been implemented in our school district. We're going back to the SHAC committee to get additional feedback on not only this, but some of our playbook as well in October. It is really just the work that we've done within the past year with an amazing group of teachers, counselors, administrators. Denise and Lindsay have led most of it. And we are excited to be able to start providing professional learning for our teachers and what's the best way to implement this. So not everything needs to go at once, like slow to get better. But we know it's something that's definitely needed because they'll find it somewhere else.
Ms. Earthman, can you, for those listening online or others here, just explain what SHAC committee is again?
Yes.
Who all's involved in it?
It's the
School Health Advisory
Council.
Right.
And there are parents, there's school people on it, and there's community members and representatives from different agencies in our community. But it's a good cross-section, and students as well are on our committee.
And how many members compose the SHAC committee?
I'm gonna look at Shelley.
We have about 25.
About
Okay,
25.
I knew there was quite a few. Okay. Thank you, Dr. Winker.
I'd like to say, I obviously have some concerns over this because I guess I'm old enough to see C-Scope and Common Core and No Child, and it seems like every 3 to 8 years there's a new framework that's being brought into the school system. I'm a little concerned about the framework. I'm not positive. I was just doing some quick research here. I think it's the Aspen Group. Is that associated with SEL? Their human relativism group funded by the Rockefellers that push SEL?
There are several
According to what I
groups.
just saw on Wikipedia, anyway.
Yeah, there are several groups actually that you can research that are backed by different political groups. Absolutely.
I think Rockefeller's behind this, Gates
I
is
think
behind
there's
this.
another one that's what did we look at? It was
But to be clear, we don't use them.
we don't use them.
Right.
We don't use
Well,
them.
see, my fear is always, or my concern is always that there's a framework put in, and while the curriculum today might be okay, once that framework's put in, that distribution supply line, anything could get put in it 2 years from today, 3 years from today. And Dr. Noel, you know I've got some concerns. You and I have visited some of, and I know, Dr. Hines, you just said there's some latitude that teachers have, but it could be the people I run with, obviously, but I get weekly calls. Why did my 7th grade son, his coach asked him, does he have any LGBTQ friends? And if not, why not? And he's asking me these questions. So I'm holding this board. I don't trust who's doing our curriculum that those things aren't showing up in the classroom. You know, because we've seen in the last, whether it be tape recordings or phone calls or letters or calls in, why is my child being exposed to this? Zero, I think, was one. There was a film, a Pixar film. There was a book on a shelf in a 3rd grade classroom of stuff that it's even inappropriate to say in front of adults. And they're saying, and they say, well, that slips through, that slips through, that slips through. It's got to stop slipping through. And I had someone ask me this week, will my child be exposed to these issues while you're on the board? And I said, I hope not. He said, what are you doing to change it? Because it is happening. So I've got some serious concerns. And I said, it's the curriculum people, and they correctly corrected me and said, no, it's not. It's your job, the board member. You've got to make a culture there that these teachers know they will not bring this stuff in to the classroom. So I know they say, well, here's 10 items you can pick. And I think there was one that President Hubert and I spoke about earlier, whereas, well, it was a new teacher, she didn't know, she picked one of the 10, didn't preview it, and yes, it was inappropriate, and everyone agreed it was inappropriate. How is that sifting into her picking one of the 10? When we all agree, yes, that was inappropriate.
She didn't read the book.
So
Well, who's the 10,
So
who's
let
the
me-
people
let
who
me-
picked the 10 things for her to pick from?
I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to respond to all of that. So the issue with the video that you're speaking of, it was a choice of Pixar movies. So that was the list.
Who made that list?
It's a list of Pixar movies. It's just a
Okay.
complete list of Pixar movies, all right? She picked one off the list, didn't read it, or didn't preview it. Showed it to one class. Once she showed it, she realized it was wrong. It was completely and totally addressed. Not a single person in here justified it, excused it, or hid it. Principal called every parent that night to speak to them
Well, this
about
is
it.
a one-off, but there's a lot of
Absolutely,
one-offs.
I will agree with you that it's a one-off.
There is.
It was a one-off. I want to go back to the 7th grade because you and I talked about that, and so I want, for the record, I want to answer it publicly like I
Okay.
answered you privately. That the parent brought you that concern. As we went back and looked at it, It was a counselor doing a 4-year plan with our Naviance inventory index, asking a question, and the question that was asked is, do you like to be around people that are different from you? There was nothing in it. That was an interpretation by a parent, and I asked for follow-up. I didn't get any. So at the end of my investigation, that was what was asked. Do you like to hang or like to be with people that are different from you? So to take that and stretch it to my PE coach was asking, that's not an accurate characterization of our staff.
We weren't there, but I know what the parent told me his son said. He said, this is what my son said.
But you're taking that and making it as if though it's the gospel. And what I have a problem with is it seems like more of a conspiracy theory for folks who take this and all those outliers. That means these things are in fact embedded in here or we're creeping in here, because you got, I forget how many educators, we got 8,000 employees, I forget how many of educators, because one didn't read a book prior to showing it to a classroom. Doesn't mean there's something we need to throw out this social emotional learning system because we have some fear that that's a rampant thing, it's a systemic thing that's involved in a foundational educational concept. You see what I'm saying?
I do, but I think there's more than one off, though.
And
It's becoming more and more one-offs.
But we create procedures and policies, put them in place. Like the situation with the video, it wasn't followed, right? And so we had to address that, and we said it very clearly. We talked about a situation that happened at the Woodlands High School 2 years ago. Immediately, as you well know, you and I work through this together.
Right.
As soon as it comes to us, we deal with it. And you're right. Mistakes are going to happen. All right. There's no way around that. To Mr. Williams' point, we have 8,500 employees that come to school every day. Probably 6,000 of them are in a school with a child. 68,000 children coming to school on a daily basis. Look, all the opportunities there for there to be a mistake made. And there are mistakes made every day. Some of them are mistakes that you hear about because, as you said, the people that run in your circle have their concerns about. But we have concerns that get made in other areas too that other groups have concerns about. But it doesn't mean there's intentional bias or there's intentional intent to make things happen. Some of it is volume, right? If in a given year we were to have, let's say, 6 or 7 of those one-offs that occurred, okay? Just by pure math, that would mean that Montgomery ISD might have one every other year just because we're that much bigger than them. Like that, so it's about opportunity. On any given day, we have millions of instructional minutes that can occur. No, we're human. Everybody's human. Our teachers are human. They're wonderful people. They're working really hard. They're stressed to the very, very limit. And they will make mistakes just like I will on any given day, just like any of us will because we're not perfect. But when we make a mistake, we correct it and we move on. What we've tried to make very clear to the community is we reflect the community, right? Like we reflect the values of the community. Do we have teachers that see the world in all different ways? Yes, and that's beautiful. Just like our community has people that see the world in all different ways. But regardless of how they see it personally, they understand their role as a teacher, and that is to challenge students to think about it from every dynamic. The greatest teacher in the world is a teacher that when the kid walks out of there, they go, I don't really know which way the teacher was arguing. Like, I couldn't tell you which way what the teacher agreed with. Like, that's a wonderful teacher. I was blessed that my kids had a government teacher like that, and they would tell me, like, I couldn't tell you how he would vote, right? That's a wonderful teacher. But it doesn't mean you don't talk about those things. It just means you're going to argue both sides so that kids can form their own opinion. And whatever opinion they form, that's theirs. But
well, obviously, we know there's teachers, like one in Magnolia that said, I don't care if I go to jail, I'm going to teach CRT, I don't care what the law says.
Yeah, well, that's Magnolia.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, so that shouldn't,
I don't understand.
We're in a workshop, am I allowed to speak with uninterrupted, Mr. President?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. When we see there's teachers doing that in Willis, I know not here in Conroe, but I've seen it in Willis, seen it in Montgomery, in Magnolia, teachers saying, I don't care, I will do what I want. I don't care what the school board says, I don't care what the law says. And I would just like a culture in Conroe that our teachers say, you can't bring this stuff in. Do any of our teachers ever come in and accidentally open up the Quran and start reading it every morning? Or the Bible? No, they know you don't do that. Well, it seems that some of this other stuff they're not so sure about, can I do this or not? It seems they're very clear on what they can't do on some areas, but they're not so clear on what they can't do in these areas. That's culture. That's the culture we're setting. What do we allow? And when a teacher brings something in, what do we say? Well, okay, just don't do it again. Or do we say there's got to start being accountability? You can't bring this into bring these items into little children or kids that we're trusted with and tell the parents, well, we're going to do what your kids, what you want, and we're going to teach them what we want, not necessarily what you want. And there's teachers that are saying that. I can bring in probably hundreds of evidences from teachers saying that. We know there's teachers like that. So I want to say, what kind of culture are we putting in of accountability that says, you don't do that in Conroe? That falls on us. That falls on these 7 seats in
No,
this.
no, they don't. So my issue becomes, are you finished, by the way?
Yes, sir.
My issue becomes, you're taking a fanatic approach to something, and you're extrapolating it to the whole population, right? I don't see, first of all, how CRT's been defined. I think it's totally bogus, a bunch of crap. How it's been defined, I don't see how we can make that bridge to this. Nor am I interested in entertaining how someone else did it, and continues to do so. We tell folks we don't do something. We've written it, we've documented, we have meetings about it, we tell them we don't do something, but yet they're gonna force it on us to say, you do it, right? I don't know how plainly, how much more simplistic you can make it to say, we don't do this as you defined it. We're having a whole workshop to say we don't do something, and we say it multiple times, but yet we got people up here that's going to find one example and try to extrapolate that to the entire, learning community as to, you guys must be, the culture of you is this. Because we found one teacher reading a book that they weren't supposed to, or showing a video that they weren't supposed to. Why are we entertaining these 2 or 3 fanatic, folks that come up here with all these outlandish conspiracy theories? Because in my opinion, they don't have nothing else better to do, right? They're looking for some sort of rally cry, if you will, and the school board is an easy target, right? That's what's frustrating to me. And it's also frustrating to me that you entertain it.
I'm a voice for the people that put me here in this seat.
Yeah.
They said a lot of stuff gets talked, this never gets mentioned. It never gets mentioned in the board meeting. It's always swept under the rug, and if it's mentioned, other people on the board try to sweep it under and get rid of it as fast as they
I
can.
don't do any sweeping. I'm just calling a spade a spade. I think it's foolishness. And I think
When a parent
entertaining.
calls me and says my kid was exposed to this, I can sympathize with that taxpayer that says, you're right.
Hey, man,
We shouldn't have exposed your
you can
child
be
to that.
self-righteous all day long, but I'm exposed to parents to say the stuff that you post and you do, right, is out of line. So,
I'm not a teacher. I'm not employed by the district.
But yet you sit here and represent us, and you want to hold a culture accountable. You want to hold us. You want us to enforce some culture in which you, other enough in and of
Who
itself.
ultimately is in charge of the curriculum?
We hire folks to do that. You're not in there.
What is our job?
Our job is to make sure from top down, we put person in place right here, this man right here, to enforce what we deem to be a curriculum, a culture, and the educational aspects or quality of education that is supposed to be pushed down to the school system. And then we get back, give him the resources and tools he needs to be successful and get out of the way. That's
In
what
the
we're supposed to
day-to-day operations, I agree with
do.
you.
It's not us on day-to-day.
Culturally, I mean, philosophically, I disagree. The 7 people in these seats are in charge of that. Not in the day-to-day operations, the overall.
And we did that.
Except it's written by the state.
We know what happens,
We hired a man to do that.
and we know what's happening.
No, we don't. You know what's happening because of your very limited scope of view. Extreme.
And I'd
I
like to make it,
disagree
I'd
with
like to make it clear just from, so that there's no question, like,
Let them take that off.
in any of these situations, there's been accountability in every single one that you and I have ever spoken about. And I think you know that. We've had these conversations privately. I don't believe there's ever been one that you've brought me that I've just said,
I would agree with that.
no, so I think that needs to be known is every time we're responsive. And like I said, we make mistakes, but we deal with them when they do. And once again, mistakes come in all forms and fashion. They come in ways in which, one group might hear and in ways that other groups might hear. But we'd love to be perfect. We never will be. But I think we do the best that we can to handle it. But I don't believe we have a culture problem. I don't believe that we have groups of teachers running around not wanting to follow the standards of Conroe ISD. I don't believe that's who our staff is. I really don't. I just think we have really good people that are reflective. They are our community. They live here. We are the largest employer. We represent our community better than anyone else because we employ more of them than anyone. And so I just believe in our folks. So, but I mean, we can move, I don't know, Ms. Earthman, if you
I
have.
would add, I want to go back and add and say thank you, Dr. Noel, but, I just want to stress, what you're seeing up there is embedded and based on state law and board policy.
thank
Your
you.
board policy
Thank you.
is written right there.
We said that multiple times.
And I just want to make sure that I want that message to be very clear that nothing that we're putting out there is anything other than what we are required to do.
Thank you.
And that is our job, to do what you tell us to do, and we're doing it. So, just want to make that very
I understand that, and in an effort to move along, but also to address what's going on, we also recognize that sometimes you have rogue teachers that go off grid, right? So I think what makes me feel comfortable is to know that I got two questions. When that occasion happens, how do we handle it? And for learning tools and equipment and products out there that are going to be brought into the classroom, do we have a system to vet those that are coming into the classroom to make sure that they follow TEKS and everything we're doing? And when they don't, do we have a process on how we handle that?
Yeah, so two things. Anytime, we have employees make mistakes every day in a variety of ways, right? It might be showing up late, it might be, getting off, whatever the script, it's handled in the appropriate manner and at the level of response is based upon the level of error, right? It could be, reteaching, it could be documentation, it could be people, losing their job, depending on what the error was. So all of those things happen, and they're addressed. And also intent is concerned, right? Like the example of the video, I don't think there was any intent of the young lady was trying to send a message. She made a mistake by not viewing it and put a message out there, but she was not attempting to bring that message in. If it was different, where she was intentionally bringing that in, that's a whole nother layer of conversation that has to occur with that. The process for how do instructional materials come in, you have kind of two sets of worlds here, right? You have one, which is the classroom instructional world, and I'll let Chris probably talk a little bit about this when I don't say it perfectly. The classroom instructional world, which is like the required curriculum piece, right? So you hear that from Dr. Upshaw when she comes in here and she shares, about the textbook selection process, and they're vetted and all those things go through, and we have committees and get feedback, and it's open to the public. So that's the instructional piece, and we have that process even when we're choosing books that are read from classroom sets, and it varies a little differently when you start talking about college level classes. Sometimes those push further because they're coming from the college and it is a college course, but those books are vetted in a way because it's a required piece of curriculum. It's a separate system when you start getting into the library. Now you're in a whole different conversation about library books, and there's generations of arguments about library books, right? So that process is is not as stringent because it's not required. It's more voluntary choice. So there is more diversity in thought and diversity in the library. But even there's a process. If a parent has a concern about one of those resources, there is a board. It's your process. It's in the board policy, the process that occurs that can challenge any of those pieces, and we would follow that process, and in the end, then a decision would be made. And if, let's say, a book was challenged and it goes through, and we would form a committee, would read it, go through, analyze it, make a decision. If that committee said, no, we believe that's a good resource, we understand this passage may not be what we would want it to be, but the book as a whole is good. It should be a resource to continue being in our library. If the parent disagreed with that, they could then bring that to the next level, which would then it would come to you all. So those processes are in place. Those are in board policy. Those are your processes that exist. We're happy to go through those. I mean, that's.
I don't feel like I need to go through. I just want to make sure
Yeah.
it was there.
And did I get anything? Okay.
There is process, and if something is brought, as you said, as principal, teacher, student, parent brings something to you, then there is basically a
Absolutely.
process to address that as well.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so in closing, unless we have additional questions, we wanted to end with a quote by Dr. James Comer, who is a professor at Yale University. No significant learning occurs without a significant relationship. And what you've heard tonight from our departments is that we work very hard to build those relationships between our students and our teachers and our community, because at the end of the day, we address the whole child. We teach what the law says, curriculum, academics. This is about building a future of learners for our community. Everything we do connects back to campuses because we promote children's learning, well-being, and healthy development, because that's what we are called to do. We took this job to make sure that we made a difference in the lives of children. And I hope you heard that tonight from the descriptions of things that happen in our department. Are we 100% perfect every single day? As you've heard from Dr. Knoll, we're not, but we strive for perfection because kids deserve it, and we'll keep giving it our very best. And we want to thank you for your support as we continue to have these positions to make everything possible for our students. So at any time, if you have any questions, feel free to contact any of us. We thank you for your time tonight.
Great job.
All right, Dr.
I have
Go ahead.
one thing to,
Yes.
yes.
Go. Ms.
Oh, I just want to say, we kind of got off track a little bit there, but I just want to say that what you're doing is not easy all the time, but it's so important, and I am so thankful that we have knowledgeable and passionate people leading these topics. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanders?
You're here. Dr. Taylor, this is directed directly at you, and I've had this conversation with you privately, and I'm going to make it public, that I know your heart, and I know what you do. I mean, every year we do Read for a Better Life, and Dr. Tamika Taylor is the one that always called me on the phone. She just didn't send me a note. She called me on the phone and said, could you come and read to our students? And that was the highlight of my day, going and spending a few hours at your school. And I know your heart for students, and I think we have the exact right person in the role that you play now. And I just want to publicly say thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great job.
Do you want to say something as well?
Anybody else?
No, I applaud you guys. I know these topics sometimes gets a little bit heated, but I know that you guys, we have the right people and staff in place. Dr. Knoll has done a phenomenal job of putting key people in the right place, folks that are passionate about what they do, have a sincere passion for the kids, and I wouldn't want your jobs. I see what it takes, and I see the level of commitment it takes. So kudos to you guys, kudos to the teams, everyone that supports you guys, and kudos to you for Dr. Knoll for taking it on the chin a hell of a lot of times for us. So thank you, sir.
The one thing I'd like to add as well, did you have?
I would just say thank you too. I wouldn't want your jobs either. So thank you.
Now, what I want to say is kind of echo Mr. Sanders, but they say the truth travels in twos, so I'm going to almost say the same thing. But Dr. Taylor, we're grateful to have you. I'm fortunate enough to know you for the last probably 20 years. And I also wanted to say, and Mr. Sanders took a lot of the words out of my mouth, but I know your heart too. I know how much you love these kids and these students and your profession, and you do a great job. Every level you've gone to, you've made a huge difference in these students' lives, and people follow you. And we appreciate you for what you do, and I want you to know that we got your back too. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're here.
Anybody else? Okay, we will adjourn at 9:20. Thank you.
All right, thank you.